to another episode of By the Numbers. I'm your host, Richard Lewis. Joining me, as he always does, is the esports historian, Duncan Thorin Shields. The show will be produced by Sam Bainlaw-Davies, and I'm sure it's going to be a nice, gentle show with no controversy. Nothing negative could possibly come out of it. It's just going to be a discussion about video games. In fact, actually, Duncan, I think we should probably stray into something less controversial. Why don't we do a show on the Israel-Palestine conflict? It feels like safer ground than the world of esports, doesn't it?
Well, actually, along those lines, I would just like to say at the outset of the episode, I want there to never again be any forms of murder, discrimination, abusive messages ever committed or perpetrated towards anyone alive or to in the future be alive. So now that I've said that, I hope you understand where I stand on those matters. And any of you who don't now immediately, like a show trial, say exactly those words, not only tacitly support those things, but in some ways are encouraging them. That is the logic I have been taught by Reddit in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get to that in a moment.
It up, just plant the seeds.
Well, so obviously we'll start with petty grievances, which is the least popular part of the show. We're going to get to that in a moment.
Hour one, as I call it.
Yeah, exactly, mate. I'm actually, mate. So I was feeling down yesterday, and I did something that's very much lifted my spirits. And I recommend if you're ever susceptible to the abuse getting on top of you, you follow this one simple trick. Doctors hate him, but anyway. Just before we do that, sponsors don't hate me. They love me. They sponsor my stuff. Been with me for a long, long time. They've got a wicked giveaway, by the way, on Twitter, which I just retweeted. You can get yourself the value of a gaming PC, so go check that out on their Twitter. But obviously, make sure you signed up to the website as well. .com/RLS. Support them because they support us. Very simple. Our VPN sponsor is NordVPN. Get 70% off. nordvpn.com/RLS. Super simple, just 3 letters. It's a great product. We've had lots of positive feedback. I strongly recommend you get a VPN. It's just sensible in this day and age. So with all of that said, Duncan, into petty grievances that we segue in, as I said, the part of the show everyone skips. The reason for the demand of timestamps on the show. So yesterday, I actually streamed the replay that we're going to talk about, and I was sat there, and I was talking to Davey and talking to Dust. The homies turned up. I was saying I was a bit down. The hate was sort of getting on top of me because it was very hard for me to kind of reconcile, having given so much to the CS scene. Like, I don't expect to be a hero in League of Legends, right? Even though I did a ton of good work out there, essentially revolutionized the way they approach journalism because nobody even did roster leaks over there till me, Jacob Wolf, and Josh Raven absolutely fucking would smash it out every season. And then we fast forward to ESPN doing wolf bombs. I'm the architect for that. It was incredibly hard to create that as a normality because people said it was bad because they were children that didn't understand journalism and essentially sports journalism. But whatever, I was never expecting to be a hero over there. StarCraft, I attacked all the sacred cows, probably not fondly remembered by some, fondly remembered by others. That's a 50-50. Rocket League, it's children. Children don't like to be told they're children. So, yeah, get that. And generally, you can go through all of the scenes, and I've just been the guy that sort of come in and said, this is shit, and this is why. And people have gone, yeah, but I really like that. And I've gone, yeah, but it's shit, though, and this is why. And so you don't expect to be popular. Now, CS is a different kettle of fish, because for 17 years, I've essentially given the best part of my adult life across to this esport and tried to keep it safe and tried to keep negative elements out of it. People only seem to think I did the one story, I Buy Power, especially the newcomers. That's the only one they find when they Google search my name. That and DreamHack Hell in a Cell are the only 2 things that come up. And people go, I used to do great work, but he doesn't now. They forget that last year it was me who leaked that Louvre agreement that ESL were trying to sneak through, and it led to material changes being made to that contract and agreement. And a ton of other stuff.
With the story about Astralis, I think it was really with Glaive doing the burnout thing, wasn't that yours?
Yeah, exactly. So, obviously the idea that I'm not producing journalism and not producing work's a bit silly. But what I've had to read a lot of lately is that I'm a net negative to the scene in CS, and that I actually proactively cause it harm, which people can't specify. They can't specify the harm. Basically, the harm seems to be they don't agree with some of the opinions I hold, but whatever. So that was getting on top of me because it was just every time I express an opinion, there was like, my opinions immediately go to the front page of Reddit. And I am currently the most talked about thing in Counterstrike, even at the height of all of this controversy with the stuff we're going to talk about on the show. So it was kind of wearing me down because I couldn't understand it. But then what I did the other day, Duncan, and this is what I strongly recommend you do. I went and looked into some of these people, just the people who were like serially hate posting and stuff, and it's
Okay.
actually incredible. It's actually
Oh, does it do what basically is the hard thing to do, right? Which is on some level, if you paused, you would obviously realize it's not really me, is it? Like it's something to do with them. When you looked into it, did it sort of like, I'm gonna guess it just established that, right? Like these are nutters, I'm sure, in politics or some other area that's fuck all to do with you.
Even more tragically than that, what I realized very quickly was that, first of all, we're probably dealing with people who are absolutely young. I would like to think so, based on their intellectual capacity. But, so here's an example of one. There's a guy called, here we go, on the Reddit, called IBU dash hate LA 99. I boo hate LA 99.
So we're assuming he's born in 1999 there.
Possibly. Or maybe he hits the number 99. Maybe he hits LA, maybe specifically the year 1999 in Los Angeles. I don't know. I don't know what the name means. But anyway, this guy was posting, and said that, Richard Lewis should take a break. You should definitely take a break. The internet's getting on top of you, and I want to make it abundantly clear that I don't hate Richard Lewis and all this stuff. And then you look at his history, and it's like, Richard Lewis is an idiot. He's got no sources. He makes things up. Like, literally, there's like 10 comments before that. And what I realized is, it's not that in their minds, they don't see that as contradictory, right? They don't hate me, but they're children. And like children, they only understand the world in fairy stories. And so what they've done is they've created a set of heroes. In his case, he's a NiP fan, right? So you can immediately see the problem.
Yes.
And so because he's a NiP fan, and I have been critical of NiP, forget the 100 times prior to them I've praised them, they believe that's status quo. They believe that's normal.
Yes, that's the important thing to understand, by the way, about ultras. They do. Yeah, if people don't get it, I'm not joking when I say to an ultra, if you say the player they think is the second best is the third best, you have essentially insulted him in a degree where you must hate him as a person. Like, essentially, you must have their opinions. There's no spectrum.
Yeah, and so he probably doesn't hate me. And what I also realized from looking at his comment history, he religiously consumes my content. In many ways, he probably thinks he's a fan.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh, okay. And then this is true. What's happened with all of them, they're all like jilted lovers, essentially.
Right.
Because they all religiously consume my content. Obviously, I'm on the CSGO subreddit, Discord, the official subreddit Discord. I have a little lurk there. And let me tell you how tragic that is. Because, yes, a lot of the hate that we get, people downvoting stuff in the new queue and whatever when it goes to Reddit, comes from there. I went and sort of looked. It's got 24,000 people on that Discord. Only 30 of whom are really active. And it's just the same names talking. And so I looked at those names, same shit. They're kids, and they're dumb kids. And I feel sorry for kids these days, because when I was 18, I was out snorting coke and fucking having wild sex and going to parties and working as a doorman. And these people are spending their best years hunched over a keyboard, and they're not having a sort of equivalent experience. It's actually really sad. So now I understand why they get overinvested in this stuff. And so I looked at those guys, and these are the types of people who unironically say "pog," They let's go. They only talk in the internet lexicon at the time. They don't have any thoughts or feelings beyond that, and they're just not very intelligent. But again, the same thing was true. They post my videos. Hey, look, React Andy's at it again, says one, and he posts a video of Richard Lewis. But what I realized was he was also saying Dessert will make better content than the score. I actually like Richard Lewis's content, nice. And it's sort of like what's happened at some point in their lives. We like Richard Lewis. Oh no, he said one thing, and then now, because they can only do binary because they're on this like lower intellectual frequency, they now absolutely hate me and dedicate a very disproportionate amount of their energy towards that. And just as a final point, one of the moderators on that Discord, who's not an official mod. No, but then I look. This person was spamming lies about me to G up the people. And what was kind of a bit concerning was one of the regulars said, "Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if someone shot Richard Lewis at an event." And no, I mean, and I think that their rationale for that is, well, why wouldn't you? You know, like, and the mod is there interacting with that conversation and just doesn't think that's an abnormal or weird thing to say. But then I looked into them, you know, they're posting lies about me to G that reaction up. They're saying I did this and did that, right? And then I looked into their life, and it's just, they're making posts on Reddit about, yeah, I moved to a foreign country 10 years ago and I didn't speak the language and I was horrifically bullied in school. Yeah, and you go, well, yes, well, first of all, now I understand why you're a moderator on a
exactly.
Discord. Right? but
that
also,
origin story checks out.
Yes, but also, of course, you hate somebody that has sort of also had those experiences, but has not turned into someone who's like, oh, but has become confident. It's almost like holding a mirror up to.
Let's also be real as well, by the way. Like,
you know,
listen, I understand that it's true. You know, the people who think they're doing you a favor. You know, if you just made this point with less abrasive tones and that, you are aware this is comedy, right? Like, your whole thing's like, I think Sam Kinnison's points would have been made better if he hadn't been screaming all the time. It's like, that's part of the act, you dumb fuck. No one tunes into this show to hear us sat like C-SPAN. Like, well, of course, I disagree with Mr. Hitchens' point, but the way that CPAC, like, no one tunes in for that. You don't tune in for that, for a start.
Yeah, I know. No, they don't.
No, of course not. And by the way, I get the premise when they say that, right? But they are also, when they do that, because this ties into what you're saying, I also get the sense that, like, if they were just honest with their background, if that person said, look, I was actually, like, really badly bullied when I was at school, and so whenever anyone, like, has an aggressive tone, you know, it triggers me a little bit.
Exactly.
Then I'm on board. I'd be like, listen, I'm not going to change what I'm doing. I'd just not watch him. But I get where you're coming from.
Yes.
But the fact they don't do that, they don't add their part to the equation. They just make it all about you and essentially project their internal dilemma onto you, is what means we get into these massive miscommunications, don't we?
Yeah, and that's kind of what listen, I was sort of like, my original plan was essentially to come on today and do like a statement, and I was going to talk to you a little bit before it. I talked to Sam about it already and basically say, like, look, I don't want By the Numbers to sort of exist in its current form anymore. I want to take it on Patreon and just do it for the people that pay for it, and I don't want the plebs to kind of come in and fuck with it and express all these opinions. And you know, I'm sick and tired of being the most talked about thing in Counterstrike. People think, because again, they can only think of it in their terms, they think I express my opinions or take the stances I take for the drama. I don't
think you're Jake Paul, basically. It's like, this is how he does it. This is what he lives on it. He thrives on it.
I don't. If it was down to me, I would rather those threads didn't exist.
Agreed. I'm not joking when I say I've reached the point where I want to opt into a Reddit ban from content.
Yeah, seriously.
And I just never have my content ever consumed or commented by these people. Again, sounds fucking amazing when I sign up.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I'm at mentally as well. But, you know, you also then have to think about, like, yes, those hate watchers that I'm describing are going to be there, but also the new people. I'd rather someone who was new to the scene came in and got the straight dope from me rather than all the other cunts that are rapidly taking over esports, right? So, you know, it was eye-opening because ultimately, what I realized is I'm thinking that they are what I would consider to be like someone who hates, you know, like when I hate something or someone, it's reserved to a very small amount of people in my life. It's pretty vitriolic and passionate, and it's not flippant. It's not something I've arrived at that day while having a cup of coffee. You know, it burns with the passion of 1,000 suns. It's core to who I am. Kids these days aren't like that. That's about having principles, and these people haven't even really developed their own personalities yet, let alone a sort of roadmap for the rest of the way they're going to lead their lives. And that's probably not going to happen until they get into their 20s. I think people are generally growing up later in life these days. You know, they say 30s is the new 20s, right? So whatever, you know, it actually helped. It actually looking at
I can see how as a thought exercise that would be useful, especially for you to frame it. But here's the thing, though, what I did appreciate, because I'll get a few laughs out before we get into the part where we just shout at the camera about what cunts these people are, just on a humorous level, because that's always been my approach. Is I have to flip tragedy to comedy. I have to switch that filter, and then I can handle what I'm dealing with. Because otherwise, if I just looked at like the depressing state of this community and the way they behave towards us, the only option would be to leave, wouldn't it? Like, why the fuck would you stick around at that point? But here's what did make me laugh. The same people who Richard's describing now, who were just cunts to us, just everything we say, they have to twist, make it not what we said, lie about us, just make up a bunch of stories about things we may or may not have done, all sorts of shit, right? The same people always want to have their cake and eat it, though. So they then will turn around and go, this community's bloody heartless. Don't you guys know, like Olaf said, that there are people behind these names? Yeah, there's people behind Richard Lewis and Thorin, you fucking cretins. The ones you've been obsessively talking about for years at a time. And guess what? Every one of your favourite players that ever tried to donk on us publicly, we had a name behind, we were someone behind the names then. But it was just funny then, wasn't it? Because apparently, unless I prove with an affidavit, someone said they would kill me, that has no value, the death threat to me. But someone can just say, I'm having death threats, and that overrides everything else that's going on in the community. So you guys don't know which way you want it. You just shift in whichever way the wind blows is ridiculous. Yeah. You can't have it both ways on that one. Well, you can't be the 30 mentally ill people we called out last episode and then also be, can we have a little bit of respect for people on the internet? There are people behind these who've got feelings and that, motherfucker, you're trying to make us kill ourselves. We're just too good. Your gaslighting isn't strong enough. You aren't strong enough.
I'm actually going to get to that a little bit later on, but obviously let's start with the fucking big story.
Yes.
And just to let you all know, we're not going to go super hard in the paint on this one particular topic because the horsemen are sort of galloping in the stables and there's a fucking chance, I think, that we're likely going to do a special with Monty, who obviously is the guy over at Flashpoint. And it's going to be interesting, I think, because I've got my views. I think Duncan's got his views that differ from my views. Sure. And then Monty's obviously in Flashpoint. But crucially, Monte Cristo was critical of the decision himself, yes, publicly. And, one of the funny things I read as well from one of those people I was talking about earlier was, you can't trust anything Richard Lewis says. He works for Flashpoint. These people don't even know the law, It's
my favourite was the one where they thought I owned Flashpoint before I left. That was one of the best of all time. Because first of all, just imagine that premise. So I just own a league, and I've presumably made all these teams buy in for $2 million to me. It sounds like I'm the best. Nicola and Ion would be fucking knocking on mine. How do you do it, Thorin? I can't even get a bloody buy Bobski.
Yeah. So, anyway, we're not going to go too hard in the paint, but let's set it all up. So, obviously, Flashpoint has been hosting their first Valve event. It is the regional major ranking event for Europe. It's very prestigious. It's the first of its kind. Nature is healing. The pandemic is receding in the European region. And we're looking to host a LAN event in November for the major in Stockholm. And so these tournaments are very important because we've got a number of RMRs to get through before that, 3 in total. And all the best teams in the world are vying for a spot at that major. So you have Flashpoint, who have had a very dubious start to their business. They've had a number of problems, which Thorin has outlined repeatedly, despite his involvement in Flashpoint. When he was at Flashpoint, he did that. When he left Flashpoint, he did it again in more detail for different things. They got the RMR, seemingly against conventional wisdom. I think people thought maybe Blast might get it or whatever. Anyway, they got it, and it was going okay. And then we had this incident where NiP were playing Anonymo. For those who don't know who Anonymo are an upcoming Polish team with 2 Polish veterans in the form of Snacks, who actually is back to form, kind of playing well again. Great for him. And Innocent, if you know him, he's been around the block. And so, not a team you should take lightly, but because of this huge PR machine that's been trundling through the esports scene, and I'll get your thoughts just about this, Device moving to NiP in a reputed €1 million deal, all I seem to read on the fucking, websites was this recurring phrase. It's like signing Cristiano Ronaldo. It's a big deal. It's like mainstream sports. And, this is obviously the PR hype and the PR machine. And everyone was saying, oh, look, NiP get Anonymo in the first round, right? There was this expectation that NiP were going to win their first game. Device was Cristiano Ronaldo and Tom Cruise rolled into one, coming home, and that it was, and that this was going to usher in a new era for ninjas in pajamas. Did you find the media hype a bit weird and a bit almost counterproductive to NiP?
Funny thing is, I actually had also been reading a lot of these articles that are in the mainstream Swedish press, essentially. It's basically on like the big tabloids in Sweden. Ever since Device signed, just like in the Danish scene, see if you can follow this one, guys. Bizarrely, in the Danish scene, they don't report on certain things about Astralis that would be really bad and that Astralis wouldn't want them to report on. But magically, they leak literal hard data of like signings that Astralis apparently doesn't want to say publicly, but benefits from being known as information. So in the same way, Device comes over to Sweden and it's the same bloody show. It's like they wheel him out and they take him city to city. They go, it's like the fucking Elephant Man or something. Like, look, behold, our new player from Denmark. He's the greatest. Penis is very smart. Never mind that. Like, you know, fucking, just a joke about the Elephant Man there. Don't know anything about Device's penis. You can imagine it's probably got a lot.
That is actually a straight fire reference.
There you go. Yeah, it is straight fire.
Yeah,
It's from the movie. So here's the thing that people won't get right is what Richard's implying, and I think he's correct. I saw his video. Is this isn't a coincidence? Like all of these newspapers didn't go. Look, we weren't really even that interested in CS before, but we're just going to obsessively talk about this new player who hasn't played a game for you yet. By the way, when they keep saying a phrase like that, like it's like Cristiano Ronaldo, that essentially implies NiP sent you a document and it had a bunch of talking points, including it's kind of like when Cristiano Ronaldo left Real Madrid to join Juventus. Like they've basically just taken that. If you don't know how lazy hacks are, because I'm talking about tabloid websites here, these aren't people who are going to win the Pulitzer or something, guys. They're just fucking. This is just an everyday gig for that guy. He's just writing up whatever he's told by his editor. Guess what? In the same way as a student might just Google something and like sort of half plagiarize, they're just taking stuff out. What they're doing is rewriting the talking points. These aren't high level writers. So yeah, basically what this suggests is it's why the whole thing that NiP snuck under the wire when they announced Device of like, and what's coming next is even bigger, was the real fucking like one that you needed to pay attention to, because this is all building into that. They're building up this idea that NiP has done this earth-changing move in the game and that bringing him in is going to redefine the whole squad, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, put it this way, the amount of fucking like sheer steam they've gotten out of this bloody story is mental. You haven't played a game, Richard. I must have seen at least 3 or 4 full tabloid articles, which each do the same thing. They each contain 1.5 new facts around all the other shit that we've all read every other time. So, like, I agree. There's no way that happens organically. That is like I would just go ahead and speculate that is like pushed from the NiP side. They obviously have the connections with the fucking press in that regard. And in this scenario, I think it's building into something.
Yeah, I mean, look, you have to remember as well, and we've talked about this on previous shows, which people can go back and check out. You know, we've called out corruption in the Swedish press before, in the sense that they only they basically regurgitate and publish the talking points of NiP, who were the big Swedish brand, more so than Fnatic.
But this way, there was no one in their scene going and digging through all the NiP stuff that you found out. And like, logically, this is what fans don't get. If the media is what it purports to be, they even claim now as an excuse, cynical, would you do it for clicks? That wouldn't get clicks to show that NiP's full of fucking corrupt people stealing the money. That would be one of your biggest stories you could ever break. People essentially either are told, do not investigate this stuff, or we just have no interest in it anyway, you know?
Well, so I knew a journalist. I don't know if I ever told this story, and obviously I can't say who it is, but I knew a journalist in that scene who, when all the NiP stuff was happening, had all of the dirt, essentially.
I feel like I might know who it is, because I know back in the day there was one for a certain tabloid that was like in the StarCraft scene tangentially, and he used to basically, he was one of the first people to sort of go SGW on me and be like, you should be removed from the community for saying these things. You know, I think I know who you're talking about.
Right. Well, they contacted me and basically said, like, you know, I know you've been looking into this. Is this all accurate to your findings? One of the things that I do that obviously I get zero credit for is like junior journalists, younger journalists, lesser experienced journalists, like often because they understand the gravity of the story that they're doing, it's natural. You get cold feet. You don't want to pull the trigger because if you're wrong, you're fucked forever. You know, like you're.
You can get sued if you do it badly. Yeah,
exactly.
There's a million factors.
So one of the things that often happens behind the scenes is, you know, younger journalists will come to me and go, "This is the story as I've laid it out. Can you take a look at it and tell me if my instincts are right? Would you publish this?" And so, you know, that I've been doing that for years, and this guy did that, and I said, yeah, that's all accurate, that's all good. And then it never materialized. And what we found out later on was that his publication, despite it being a perfectly valid story, certainly newsworthy, and then eventually picked up by rival publications, essentially, down the road, they wouldn't publish it because they were worried about how it might impact on the relationship moving forward. And that's something you'll see a lot of in media that isn't really talked about. And certainly in esports media, that's been prevalent for as long as I've been around games journalism as well, with reviews. You know, when I was a games reviewer, you know, my editor, I'd submit a game and it would have a 6 as a review, and then when it got published, same words, same critique, but the number would have changed to 7.5, and I'd be like, well,
whatever
why?
the minimum he had to put it to was.
Yeah,
right?
and I was always told, well, no, it was made clear to us that if it didn't get at least that review, because that might feed into Metacritic, we'll stop sending you free copies of our games from the publishers. And I remember telling that story, and people were going, "This never happens in the games industry." It's been confirmed multiple times.
That's the entire games industry. Yeah,
that is the entire games industry. You know, yeah, all right. He said on his fucking pile of Doritos and Mountain Dew, you know, fucking whatever. But anyway, so you know, that's something that goes on. And it goes on in the Danish press too. So people will uncritically repeat whatever they want because they think it's going to get clicks. So for me, I already think NiP were essentially setting themselves up to fail. I like the way they handled the signing. I think it came out of left field. They did a pretty good job. Yeah. It only really leaked 24 hours before, right? Which is good. They did a press conference with Device and them, and even though the journalists that turned up to that were fucking idiots mostly.
The premise of having one was a cool idea. Yeah. I wish more teams do it. Yeah.
Yeah, they handled it perfectly. And so it's all going so well. Then it just gets a little bit weird. And like I say, I think the build-up and the hype definitely feeds into what happened next. So,
by the way, the other thing I should have mentioned as well is the other part that makes it not organic is this drip feed approach to how it's coming out as well. That also sounds coordinated, Richard. Like, again, everyone in theory wants to have the story first, right? So why is one publication getting their detail a week later and then the other one 3? You know, like that sounds like you're on a schedule. Then they want to literally maintain the drip feed scenario so that when they hit you with the big thing in, I don't know, a week or something, 2 weeks, whatever it is, then it has the maximum impact.
Yeah, and obviously as well, you know, who knows what NiP are going to do? Are they going to float on the stock exchange? You know, having sustained good headlines is very good for business if you've got another thing coming, you know. It's like, ooh, you know, people want to get involved on what's positive. So anyway, we get to the game. It's NiP versus Anonymo, day of the game. And NiP connect to the server, and they notice that they're getting spikes of loss, 30 to 40% loss. And they bring this up, and they tweet about it, and they tweet an exaggerated version of the reality.
Which already started us off on a bad foot, didn't it? But yeah.
Yes. I mean, look, and again, I think people have misunderstood my stance. My stance is the series shouldn't be played under these conditions, of course. I'm not an idiot. But equally, you don't help yourself by going public pretty soon and complaining about, we're going to play on 30 to 40% packet loss. You're not. If 40% of the game's information was not reaching your fucking machine, you'd be playing Portal. You wouldn't be playing fucking CSGO, would you?
It's where that round that everyone saw, that mad fucking pistol round Device did on that map, that would be impossible if he had 40% packet loss.
Yeah. So anyway, the game starts, and despite the packet loss, they win the first map 16-3. It's overpass. They absolutely batter Anonymo. In fact, Semler even remarked on the broadcast like how easy the game appeared to be for them at that time. Everyone was laughing. All was going according to plan. We get into the second map. The problems supposedly persist. They lose, I think, 16-13. And now suddenly it's a much bigger issue. And they demand...
It wasn't that when they posted it. It's when they lost the map is when they went really mental publicly.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Which, and again, doesn't look good.
Yeah, and at that point, that was when they were like, look, we absolutely cannot continue to play like this. And they raised the sort of more formal objection. Now, since then, the GoTV logs have leaked, and we've seen them. They don't necessarily paint Device in a favorable light, although I would say the GoTV logs are more flattering than other
There was worse stuff than that. And there's another
Yes.
thing I'm sick and tired of, mate, is having the literal inside info and being told by people who don't know what exists, oh, you're basing it off a thing in public that I've never said. That, oh, and that's why you're overreacted to what Simple said. I literally told you I've been DMs with him. No, but you only did this, you know, like that combined with the notion, which is going to be a prevalent theme right now, of unless you have this one consensus opinion, you agree, you believe whatever I say you believe. Those two mechanisms I'm sick and tired of. Because as you're pointing out here, Richard, there could never be nuance. Like, you could never point out, I actually agree with NiP's plight, but don't think it's fine to abuse admins. No, it has to be one or the other. Either Device is a hero or he's a villain. Or maybe I think that it was actually fucked up what happened to Anonymo. Well, that means you hate Device. It isn't one or the other. In fact, in this particular case, that was the worst part. There isn't a villain and a hero here. There's a bunch of people all over the spectrum.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, look, just on that point, while we're here, because this is another talking point, people think me and Duncan, because I did a video about it for Deserto, obviously, as a React dandy, right? Yeah, it's called Richard Lewis Reacts, by the way, if you're checking out that series. Don't be surprised if I am literally giving a reaction to something. But, you know, people have said it's all speculation in that video. Richard Lewis has no sources. I knew, and people can vouch for this, I was working the regional major ranking event for North America, and I knew the day before it went public that it was going to happen. And I knew before Anonymo, which should tell you a fucking story in itself. And this can be vouched for because I said to fucking Harry and Hugo on the broadcast when we were on downtime, I said, you're never going to guess what's happening tomorrow, boys, and told them. So, yeah, I've got no sources, obviously. I'm only the most tenured fucking journalist in the space. I only know people who work at all these companies, all these orgs. I only broke stories about fucking NiP, which no one else wanted to touch. You know, come on, use your head. If it's speculation, I preface it by saying it's speculation.
Yes.
If I say this thing happened, obviously someone's told me it happened behind the scenes. And people go, where are your sources? Are we still doing this argument, you dumb motherfuckers? Are we still doing this in 2021? Fundamental mechanics of journalism, protect your sources. You think if I fucking named everyone who told me shit, like, I'm never going to get told shit again? Like, just calm down. Realize Device and your precious NiP, you dumb Swedish cunts. Realize it's all going to be okay. They're still going to be millionaires. Your team's still going to exist, right? Stop fucking caping for a fucking bunch of crybabies and just realize it's going to be okay. I saw people on the subreddit, like literally hundreds of comments. No, NiP Device, no. Like, calm down. It's all right, mate. It's fucking all right. Your life cannot be this empty. It cannot. You have to fill it with something worthwhile. If you're going to hundreds of comments, no, but Devin, no. Calm down. Calm down. You're overinvested in a video games team. Relax, okay? It's okay for people to bring you new information that might contradict your existing way of thinking. Generally, we consider that a good thing. It's called knowledge, where I'm from, right? So calm down. So anyway, with all of that said, it wasn't just the Go TV where Dever went fucking mental. And if you look at Lurpus's tweets about this, Lurpus said, in his opinion, if he'd been making the decision, he would have disqualified Device for the way he treated the admins. And I know I think you've seen what I've seen, right?
Yes, I've seen the same thing, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, well, let's talk about that then. Device went way too far with how he was talking to the admin team, correct?
Essentially, the tone of it was along the lines of, like, almost immediately. This is before, by the way, like, you know, there's an extended period where we're going to decide what happened. He was basically just like verbally abusing these admins and telling them sort of straight up, like, you fucking amateurs, like, you know, you should never run a tournament like this. That was like the tone. That's the kind of level we're talking about here. So like that again, first of all, by the way, one thing I'd like to establish on this whole case is, can we stop this fucking thing where pro players are gods? I personally don't even think pro players should be talking to the admin. I think you should have a team representative that you all agree upon so that we can avoid these issues, so that there isn't an emotional 18-year-old, no Device is older, I'm giving an example here, who maybe doesn't know the way the protocols go, who thinks that he's a player in football, who just got a yellow card and is allowed to argue with the ref. No, this is an admin making an admin ruling, and that has fucking nothing to do with you. If you're an active player, you get no say in that ruling. ruling. You can only answer, in my opinion, when you are asked a question specifically and answer relevant to that. Instead, in this case, what Device is doing, I'm going to speculate here, is he's thinking, I'm a fucking 4-time major. I don't have to put up with this shit. So then he's obviously, by the way, because he's under pressure and he's a massive signing and this is his debut game and he's going to look like a dickhead if he loses because he has internet problems, understandably. Let's let him that frustrate him too much. And in this scenario, someone who had never heard any stories in his whole career of being a bad teammate has actually acted, in my opinion, in quite an unprofessional manner. Like, listen, this isn't like, it's not like simple. He's not saying like things that actually, will get you cancelled. But put it this way, if you could just sort of see the tone, I don't think a lot of you would be standing for him like you are. You'd realise, like, mate, I don't know if you're having a bad day or what, but you've gone over the line here. You should know that yourself, mate. You should just fucking reel it back in. Just apologise and reel it back in.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll say this because the other thing people don't realise is Device reacted to one of my tweets where it wasn't even aimed at him. I just replied. Somebody said, Device is saying he's getting 30 to 40% packet loss. And I just said, well, that's anyone who claims they can play a competitive game of Counterstrike with 30 to 40% packet loss is full of shit. That's what I said. So I didn't directly say Device was full of shit, but obviously if he is saying that, but then in that reply, he said, yeah, well, it's not constant. It is just spiked. So it's like, okay, so you agree with me then, right? Good. But we did talk privately, and I won't get into the ins and outs of DMs because that's not for this.
Yeah.
A lot of people seem to think me and Device would have problems with each other. Like, again, that's your cartoon view of the world. Me and Device aren't mates. We're not friends. We don't really know each other that well, but we have a lot of respect for each other. Obviously, I respect him as a competitor, a champion, as a person. He respects me as a person, as a journalist. He thinks I've done a lot of good for the scene. He can acknowledge that, unlike some people on Reddit. And so I was saying to him behind the scenes, basically, like, you got to, because he's unleashed now. Like in Astralis, It was clear he couldn't tweet anything. Right, it was clear from that when they leaked Nikolai say this, Astralis controlled their Twitter accounts. Now it's unfettered, unchecked, and unfortunately, he keeps putting himself in these positions that aren't going to be favourable to him because I think he's been off social media for so long. I think he doesn't understand the mechanics of it.
Right.
And so what he's done is here, by tweeting that out, immediately, not only do you look like a crybaby, and he's got every reason to cry.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
But he looks like a crybaby. And anyone who already hates you or hates your team or supports Anonymo, you're now the face of any subsequent decisions that come out. And so you must, he had to not tweet in that instance, but he was, as you said, under so much pressure mentally to win and have the homecoming debut and be the king and all of that stuff, that he put himself in the center of something he shouldn't be in. And I told him at that time, I said, listen, brother, like, I'm not arguing with you. I'm not trying to fight you. Here's a bit of advice from someone who is actually despised in the community because of his social media account. Do not tweet about this and on any level. Keep yourself as far away from it as possible. But unfortunately, the genie was out the bottle. He had to subsequently tweet apologies and then, as we'll get to, tweeted something so ridiculous. Any good work he did, he fucking undid. So back to the game, right? Third map, Mirage. Device hasn't played a lot of Mirage, obviously. It's been a while, but whatever. Still problems persist. Although publicly, the NiP account tweets, it's all been fixed at this juncture, when it hasn't. That tweet's still up. I thought they deleted it. It's just sort of buried under all the nonsense that came afterwards. So it's like, you would be forgiven publicly for thinking it was all okay again. They go in, they play Anonymo, and they lose 19-17 in overtime. And that is when the true shitstorm begins. Because we start basically saying, well, and I'll get to what I know from behind the scenes again, NiP immediately go public about how this is a disgrace. Hitcham Chahine, the CEO of NiP, who, by the way, was the original Nickel and Nyholm before Nickel and Nyholm was Nickel and Nyholm. For those who don't remember, forget the stuff that just happened with NiP. He was running the same grift. He had money in LGB, money in Copenhagen Wolves, money in NiP. He wanted to have multiple teams and multiple orgs that he had controlling interest in. He was the original Mr. Conflict of Interest. He was on the WISA Council. He's one of the ESL Louvre agreement teams, which, again, this is going to come up in a second. So
Oh, by the way, just as a quick note,
Yeah.
if you don't know who runs a company, please fuck off saying they've changed management and they're different now when you don't know who runs the company. Because I'm sick. You must have encountered it loads. I even have some of my own fans on my Discord when I point out how scummy NiP are. They go, yeah, but they have changed since then. I go, why are you just telling me NPC talking points? Okay, then, mate, who's changed? Tell me. They can never answer because it's just some stupid shit people have read on Reddit. They just keep repeating.
And you know, Hitchum is not fondly thought of by a lot of people that had those problems from that NiP, the old school generation. He was the guy who essentially came in and took over when the previous guy who was running it sort of had some nervous breakdown due to all the financial problems and went to Thailand. You know, he fucked off, he peaced out. And so, you know, you already start getting into this realm of like, well, that's a bit predatory, and it's not like fucking Heaton knows what was going on. Heaton had to fucking file for bankruptcy after this. I think Heaton got used. I mean, don't get me wrong, Heaton did a bunch of shady shit. Sure. I think the org used Heaton as well, used his good standing in the Swedish community, used his celebrity, and used him up and then tossed him aside when he was no longer convenient. You know, this is how Hitchum is the archetypal businessman in that sense. So forget all of that anyway. Hitchum publicly tweets out, "It's a disgrace! Flashpoint must never get another RMR ever again." Tweet deleted now, of course, because of the optics of it, but the internet never forgets. Then they put out a statement saying they're absolutely appalled at the standard that, you know, they've had to play under, that this is well below the standard, you know, they would expect. And in fact, actually, when they were in a similar situation at an ESL tournament, it was handled immaculately. So immediately Flashpoint are on the back foot because their rules state that, and I think this is a dumb fucking rule and it shouldn't have been in the rule book to begin with, but their rules state that if there are any issues with a game, you must play the game to completion and then retroactively raise objections to that game. This is one of the dumbest rules I think I've ever seen, because the only area that would sort of be applicable for is if you were playing against cheaters, and then in which case a replay wouldn't be appropriate. You wouldn't replay a game against cheaters. You just disqualify the cheaters. Certainly, the best way to have handled this from start to finish was, let's pause, let's find out what the problem is, let's play the game when the problem isn't there. And then, and you already had a 1 hour technical break while you were trying to figure it out. And as it would later transpire, it was all Flashpoint's fault. It was all Flashpoint's fault. Yes. Flashpoint gave a very public mea culpa.
Indirectly, of course, but yes, it was.
Yeah. As in, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's other aspects to this. NiP did only have one ISP. They didn't have an alternative line to try. If you think that's an unreasonable thing, I can tell you firsthand, almost every team I know of, because of DDoSing and just internet
Anonymo had them. Had more than one line.
Yeah, Anonymo had 3 ready to go, as we later found out in more leaked logs, which we'll get to when we talk about community reaction. So, anyway, all of this stuff is just turning the screw and the pressure on Flashpoint outrageously, publicly, immediately. And so I'll just bring you in here and just ask you, obviously that rule is fucking stupid. I mean, CSPPA even went so far as to say they think the rule is completely misinterpreted and not appropriate to this case. And I'm inclined to agree. The idea that if your internet is fucked or there's something wrong with the server, you have to go on the server, play the game out, and then go, you're right, you know that server that we all agreed was fucked? Can we have a look at it now and then maybe replay the game? Who does that serve? It doesn't help anybody. So that rule is absolutely ridiculous. And I think Flashpoint majorly fucked up by, you know, I don't know if they tunneled in on like, let's have no delays. We must have no delays. It'll be the perfect RMR if we have no delays. Mate, I'll take a fucking delay over this shit show any day of the week.
Yeah, first of all, unlike everyone else in this conversation, apparently, I don't consider myself an expert on the fucking admin rulings in Counterstrike, nor how tournament brackets are minutely operated, like what the nuance of rule interpretations are, which can never, by the way, despite what morons tell you, cover every possible scenario. That's why there will always be a couple of rules which essentially say, This will be at the discretion of the admin, which basically just gives you their power, like a judge in certain court cases can just determine what happens after the fact. Like, maybe he can't say you're guilty, but he can decide a lot of what happens once the verdict comes in. So I will say that at the outset. So my understanding of this is based on, what feels fair or what I think has been done in different tournaments. I will say, as you kind of alluded to a little bit cynically there, but I agree. When NiP go, and in a totally different tournament from your rival, we were given a rematch. Well, right, there's no actual mechanism or reason you have given there as to why you would be given a rematch. You've just said it happened. So that's like me going, all right, well, in 1994, I went in the swimming pool. It was quite cold, so we should all go in the swimming pool. Like, what's the relevance? Like, is it the same situation? What type of tournament was it? Why did they have space to do a rematch? How did they arrange the rematch? What was the protocols for how they determined a rematch? You didn't give any of that information because guess what? If you followed this story, NiP were doing their hardest to paint a very one-sided picture. Hence why they're all saying they have constant 40% packet loss, because that would make it the most extreme internet problem. Therefore, of course, you can never be expected to play it. When you then are shown to play at quite a high level at times, in fact, and clearly don't have 40% packet loss, you created that rod for your own back, mate. No one else made you do that. If you'd just said, by the way, I'm having occasional spikes, I would go, that's pretty much as bad as it gets, actually. Yeah, we should probably look at that. So my issue, first of all, is I agree. The rule seems a bit dodgy. The reason why I say I don't consider myself an expert is I do think this is a flaw that they have in tournaments, which is, first of all, I don't think open bracket tournaments should exist. I think it is the stupidest premise imaginable, because it is legitimately like in some of these tournaments telling Roger Federer, oh, you've dropped to 12th in the world rankings. You play against Bob from down the street if you both qualify for Wimbledon. That would be utterly logistically stupid and nobody would want it. But that's what we do in Counterstrike. So what we do is we have a rule set that has to apply to every game, but it starts with sometimes like a 256 team bracket, and we have to apply those rules. Well, guess what? Anyone who knows people who play semi-pro Counter-Strike, it's never their fault when they lose a fucking game. It was always a cheater. It was always someone breaking the rule, or this guy was a ringer, or using DDoS soccer. So if you allowed every game in that open bracket to be paused, to have admins coming in and doing rulings, logistically it's impossible. And then secondly, it would absolutely not only delay the tournament, it would kill the schedule completely. Now, here's where I'd separate from that. That's the flaw with having a uniform approach to the whole thing. Unfortunately, when you get to this point of the tournament, you almost need a different rule set, in my opinion. Like, I'm sorry, if you're those people like Dennis saying, but I got cheated against, mate, there is not enough time in this fucking world to stop the game, go for your shitty little team, examine the demos, determine if they're cheating qualitatively when you have not been caught cheating, and then go, right, I'm going to individually disqualify them, take all the matches back in the bracket. Like, you must agree, that is a ridiculous
Yeah, of course.
But people were citing this as an example of incompetence.
Well,
so
you'll notice I didn't, because first of all, he says they were definitely cheating against me. I mean, that's nonsense. Like you said, there's no quantitative fucking evidence of that at all, right? They haven't been caught. The anti-cheat's not got them. It's just essentially a feeling they have based on the fact that, yes, these people did have like banned accounts for cheating in another area, and there were a few dubious players, But if that was the benchmark by which we banned players, I'll tell you, you know what I mean? There's a number of people that wouldn't want that to be the standard. So anyway, and Dennis might even have played with a few in his career.
Certainly. I've got another one for you as well.
Yeah.
Here's the other angle as well. So another scenario, because my problem in this case, by the way, is as far as I can tell, because it would have taken so long to find this very obscure problem with the server, which I will say, by the way, to all intents and purposes, this is not a joke, looked like NiP was making it up, because they had zero evidence. The evidence they showed Richard of like, look at that thing, that wasn't even on the server you played the game on, so fuck you, whoever showed him that screenshot, because they essentially tried to set you up there, mate, and get you to go forwards and go, I've seen it, and it wouldn't even have been from the server. Secondly, that server was in Sweden, correct?
Yeah, so let's talk about that.
So if the server's in Sweden, your whole premise you told us publicly is all the traffic gets routed from Germany. So if I'm Flashpoint and I go, but a server in Sweden gives you the same issue, then I heard behind the scenes, by the way, they asked for like a report from the ISP of fucking NiP. It came and it just had sections missing and there was no evidence showing there was any actual problems. So all of this is adding up on day one to like, mate, I don't even want to disbelieve you, but you haven't got any fucking evidence. And then the one thing I wanted to throw in quickly, because you can tag on all this, is people kept suggesting, just like the example of the rematch, but there was a solution all along. Why didn't you just play on the server that NiP provided? Anyone who says that, I'm not joking. I can't underestimate how fucking stupid you are. You are one of the stupidest people to ever enter this discussion. Because what you're essentially saying is, in a tournament in which the only way you keep competitive fidelity is to all play on the same server group, managed by the tournament admins who understand all the settings and have full control over it, and have all the correct plugins for their anti-cheat into it, which I'm going to guess is proprietary software, so they don't just want it installed on everyone's server at anyone's fucking willy-nilly ability to, like, you know, back reverse engineer the data. You're saying that someone who's the team, who already is the team, by the way, with the massive name, can go, just play on our server right now, without any set, just play on our server right now. And you dickhead fans were going, why didn't they do it?
I know.
Y'all are some, yeah, you're literally, this is an IQ test and you failed it by answering that question.
Yeah, I mean, so, okay, on your point, yeah, because I did tweet out saying that I have seen that there were,
Yes.
I can confirm that the spikes were happening. I got sent server logs, but it was for a server cluster that didn't, I don't think included the server they played on, but was in the same geographical area. So,
Right.
in other words, I've got no reason to doubt the results were the same. But ultimately, yes, you're right. They were trying to sort of pull the wool over my eyes a little bit by saying, look, this is what happens when we route to where that server is, but not specifically the server. Now, again, I think the outcome would have been the same. I don't think NiP lied about having the spikes.
It's just that they don't get that the way they presented themselves made them look mad suspicious.
Yeah,
you know?
and I also got told behind the scenes at the time what you got told, which is that the admins were saying, look, can you just show us that the problem's happening? And they were going, well, how do we do? How can we possibly do that? How can we prove it? And then they went and got that report, as you said, and there was like redacted components to it. And it's like,
by the way, if a fan's missing our point here, because this is going to have to be a key thing we must hit here, is just because it's device, you don't just take what he says at face value. You don't go, well, you don't do like all you dickhead fans who go, well, there's no way anyone who's a pro would ever cheat, and then half the coaches that you know and love cheated in the fucking game. In the same way, right, you don't go, well, Devices, who's a 4-time major winner, says they're having internet problems, so they just are. So, admin, can you please go to a new server? If you imagine that wouldn't be abused by even some of your most favourite pros, you are out of your fucking mind. You have to treat every player in that scenario like he is the nobody from Anonymo that I couldn't name, like Kai or something, you know, like you have to treat them all like that's nobody, otherwise it is inherently unfair. That's my problem, which we're going to get to later, is I think people want it to be unfair, Richard. They just want their players to get everything their way, and they don't give a fuck about anyone else, which we'll get to obviously in a minute.
Yep. So anyway, right. All of that said, right, just to clear it up one more time, NiP definitely have a genuine grievance. There's definitely something wrong with the server. It's suboptimal they played in these conditions, even though they greatly exaggerated what the conditions were, I believe. They go on, they've lost the game, and now there's all hell to pay. Had they won, obviously we're not do it. They would have still griped a little bit, but eventually, you know, there would have been no replays. There would have been nothing like that.
I'll be coming back to that in a minute, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So anyway, what's going on behind the scenes? Because I want to talk about this as well. So the pressure that was exerted on Flashpoint was, I think, beyond. I
think this was disgraceful as well. It was the org equivalent of what Device is doing, essentially, but in business, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? This is actually the one moment. Here's the irony. You should all be thinking, I bet you're glad you dodged a bullet there. No, I'm sad because I had to watch some of our friends get fucking reamed out because they didn't know the circumstances. And guess what? As I've had to sadly learn in this business, there are very few people who have a backbone like I do. As in, they'll stand up for themselves to a degree, but like Richard's example of the game review, if push comes to shove and the business means it has to go one way, they'll look like the dickhead in public and go, I'll just have to take my licks. Now, I'll never do that. If I didn't do something wrong, I'll never say I'm sorry for it. So in this particular case, another reason this really tilted me, it's the reason why Lurpus was public about it, is because me and Lurpus, no joke, like 10, 12 years ago, used to sit watching games happen when we went at events, and we used to always comment, oh, fuck, look, SK or Navi, you know, they fucking pressured the admin, they've gotten the game in this way. I wish we'd have an admin who had a backbone who wouldn't break to these guys.
Yeah,
Tell you what, if I was the admin, I'd fucking disqualify. That's been my dream, that we would have these people. And by the way, as far as I know, we have them. People like that Mihao guy are legit as fuck. Like, they really will punish you. You will get a fine if you don't turn up at a certain time, if you fuck around, if you disobey the rules. I actually say ESL's done a pretty good job generally enforcing that sort of stuff. But in this particular case, I actually think if I could have been there, mate, I would have told them. Like, I would have just told them straight up. The one thing we are never doing is fucking deciding that if we wouldn't give Anonymo the rematch, we're giving it to NiP. We are all on the same page here, right? You can do anything else you want. You can give him prize money. You can give him RMR points. You can apologise. You can take all responsibility. But we are agreeing that we've got a principled position here, and we will never back down. Now, as far as I know, there wasn't me in the room. So Monty recused himself. It's not his part of the business, by the way. He's commissioner. And unfortunately, the admins, looks like Face It in this case, for whatever reason, decided to buckle. And in doing so, by the way, made an even bigger rod for their own backs. So in the end, you don't even fucking win from it, but whatever.
So let's talk about the pressure, because I've seen a lot of people going, this is ridiculous. NiP can't exert any pressure. So let me, I know, like, I've literally seen that comment hundreds of times, like, NiP aren't even a Flashpoint team. Right. Let's assess. Okay.
Half the problem. Let's watch.
Yeah. Yes. They're not. Exactly.
By the way,
right.
You know, that's also the other thing I said. You know, when everyone was going, ha, lol, Thorin's had to quit Flashpoint, they've got all the teams. My dream wasn't for teams who said to our faces, now we won't play the tournament unless you pay us, unless Valve forces us to at gunpoint. Like, yeah, that wasn't my dream, to have Device forced to play in the tournament and hating it every time and looking for any moment to go, fuck these guys. Then guess what? That wasn't my dream, guys. That was actually somewhat on the low end of my expectations.
Yeah. So, look, here's what happened. And this is what I was told. And remember, as I said, I was ahead of the curve on this. But the bottom line was Hitchin and NiP management went fucking mental. I mean, they went absolutely crazy. It was very clear from the get-go, despite what they said publicly, which was, again, Device tweeted out saying, we just wanted an acknowledgement that the conditions were unacceptable. No, maybe you think that your management were demanding a rematch from the fucking get-go. That was the bare minimum. And what they said and made abundantly clear was, we'll never play the Flashpoint tournament again, right? That was one thing. We will also be using our connections with all of our Louvre agreement teams in ESL to make sure that they don't support anything you do ever again. And we will certainly be summoning Valve immediately. We will complain to them and demand that you never have a regional major ranking event again, which you know is true because they fucking were comfortable enough to tweet that publicly. So that's what happened. That's the straight dope, by the way. That's not speculation. That was the type of pressure that Flashpoint, a struggling business as it is, was facing. And
also, don't forget what the last time that Face It was involved with Valve turned out like. I'd imagine they don't want Daddy Valve on the phone after the Face It major.
But that now we're getting down to it.
Yes.
Obviously, they ran the worst fucking major in history. They're already not particularly fondly thought of in that neck of the woods. And so when you apply that type of pressure and the types of teams that were going, and you know, there was maybe other teams are gonna, like, in solidarity pull out and all this potential for nonsense going on behind the scenes because Hitchin has lost his fucking mind. They're like sat down and they're going, well, you know, we're gonna have to sort of give them what they want, and it is kind of our fault, and we are gonna have to eat shit publicly. There's no getting around it. Now, for me, the problem you've got at this juncture is there's one thing in any online competition you can never do, and that's do a rematch after the fact. You know, let me just. People think this is unprecedented. People think this is you only think this has happened to NiP in the whole history of online game. There was an ESL qualifier, if you remember. We talked about it, where a team, Camel Riders, do you remember them? Right, and they lost a coin toss to play on a server where they would have had to play a qualifier for an international event on 140 ping, and they dropped out because of it. And it's just a small team, so no one gives a fuck. They had to eat that shit. Do you not remember at the fucking major we're talking about, the Face It major, Valve did an update that broke the fucking game so you couldn't hear footsteps, and it fundamentally, disproportionately affected teams. That sometimes some teams, some players on those teams couldn't hear footsteps coming around the corner. Games were decided on that factor. We didn't stop the tournament. We begged Valve to get an update, a hotfix as quickly as possible, and it completely fucked over MSL and North in particular. And if you think about how that team turned out and how MSL's career turned out, a significant finish at a major could have been game-changing.
Yes.
So these are not small issues. But did anyone replay those games? No. Think about the times where it's been intimated that competitive integrity has been affected by a live crowd. Think about Astralis fans going, oh, every time a fucking crosshair was going over people and all dents. Think about...
Mate, I remember Device once told me a story, speaking of the man in question, of losing a major semi-final, and he told me the tournament organizer, ESL, had essentially broken his mouse for him.
Yeah. Mate,
He just got to take that on the chin. So, by the way, that's one of the ones where it goes into the mix of, like, he choked every semi. Like, on that one, maybe he didn't.
Yeah. So for as long as I've been in esports, we all know online is shit. We know it's shit. It's why we prize LAN so highly.
It's already compromised from the get-go, isn't it? Exactly.
It's compromised by definition because you cannot make people play on a homogenous setup where everything is equal. Someone's always going to have higher latency, different drivers.
Maybe bad packet reg. Like you might even have a good ping and it might not hit.
Yeah, your routing might be fucked. Whatever it is, right? So we all know this going in. And the one thing we've never done it in CS. I saw some moron on Twitter saying, this has happened before. I think about Olaf pass and the Olaf. But it's like, mate, I don't know what... You're bouncing off the walls.
That wasn't a rematch. They just fucking forfeited the game.
Yeah, you're bouncing off the walls, you fucking smelly cunt. Like, at the end of the day, right, like... This is the first time we've ever done a full game rematch. We've done an overtime once, I can think of, like, but we've never done a full fucking game, right? Like this. It's never happened. And this is why it's bad. Because our entire game's history has all of these things along. Essentially, what you're saying now with this decision, NiP matters more than any of the people that never got the benefit ever again. And as I said, people say, this hypothetical exercise helps no one. Anonymo would not have had the leverage the NiP management had, and by definition would not have got this replay if they were in the same situation.
I totally agree with that.
That is unquestionable.
Yes. That's the point I want to make, by the way. When they keep saying that, because listen, we'll get to that like response in itself and how fucked the angle on it is, which is essentially that like we're only allowed to talk about one topic, but we'll get to that. The worst angle is this, Richard. Like, I don't know if you actually fully realize what they're trying to imply there, because I've seen it said elsewhere. They not only think it's a pointless counterfactual, they simultaneously also believe it is nonsense and that it is speculation, and in fact, Anonymo would have had the rematch. That's the gaslighting that Reddit is now they're trying to pull the angle, by the way, that you're only seeing the rematch is bad because you hate NiP, and that Anonymo would have had the rematch. I'm going to tell you right now, guys, I would say with a 99% accuracy, even if Anonymo had like fucking had the most outrageous looking movement in the server where they looked like they were warping and couldn't shoot anything and bullets going into a wall. Could just be Chinese match fixes at that point in time, but you get the point. Even if that was going on, there is zero world in which they were ever getting a rematch. They had one chance to win this fucking game, and that was to win on the server. That is it. They were never getting a rematch. I'll tell you that right now. And any other pro player, if they have any fucking human decency, would admit they know it's true. And that this only happened because of not only, it was NiP, but the sheer disparity between the teams. Because here's the other thing. I don't think NiP gets this rematch if it's FaZe Clan they're playing again. You know what I mean? Like, that's one thing we must establish. I'm not going to have anyone gaslight me that they're always going to be an Anonymo one. Because that then leads into this angle, Richard, of like, so why are you bringing it up then? That, by the way, I don't know if you know this, dickheads, but we can talk about any topic we choose.
Well, no, but I also think you made a point I haven't made, and perhaps has got lost in the noise, and that is absolutely. It's also true that had NiP been playing a similarly statured team or a team of great stature, NiP don't get the rematch either. It's the fact that you have this underdog with zero leverage going up against a team that is so overinvested in winning this game and getting to the major and have a device bring the major home for Sweden and all the fucking storylines that they've pumped out into the fucking mainstream, right? That and just so happens to be he's on the board at Weezer. He's got all the Louvre teams he is. He's well regarded by a lot of other team owners because they all like their own. And it's a huge. It's like the biggest org in fucking Sweden by some distance. It's not even close. You might go, yeah, but Fnatic would have won that one in the No, it didn't. None of that. You walk around fucking Stockholm, mate. You see NiP jerseys. Like, it's not even rare. It's not even an infrequent occurrence. These people are known who they are. Like, they're known in public. So the bottom line is that they got the rematch pretty much on an unfair basis. And I'll just add as well, this sort of retroactive, the statement by Flashpoint saying, yes, and this is totally in accordance with all of our rules. It was right the whole time. Suck my nuts.
I know,
like,
fuck off.
Yeah, fuck right off. What you're doing is now, you're trying to make all the pieces fit so it makes cohesive sense. Reality check. Flashpoint, you fucked up in the first instance by just simply not pausing the game because you prioritized schedule over integrity. If you're a tournament organizer, by the way, schedule comes way below a bunch of stuff.
Yes.
Just putting that out there. I don't give a fuck. People have to be up till 5 a.m. Integrity matters way more.
Do it right.
You do it right. Exactly. Do it right or fuck off. So that's point number one. And it's not surprising that Face It don't fucking know that. Right? But anyway, right? So you fucked up there in the first instance. Then in the second instance, right, you fucked up because you're going, yes, well, NiP were affected for the whole replay, but they didn't raise it until the end of the second map, which they lost in a formal capacity. Yeah, they raised it informally. The GoTV logs confirm that. They went into the series complaining about the lag. You were just disinterested in that, right? And so we are now only going to replay the third map. You still made people wait an hour anyway, so you got your fucking delay. So you should have just delayed the game indefinitely. But then once you say no, you are playing this, and you commit to that decision. To go afterwards and go, look, there's this obscure interpretation of the ruling that basically means that a rematch would be appropriate because you can raise a formal complaint after the fact. Fuck you. It's pathetic. It's absolutely outrageous. And so the sentiment I'm left with, before we segue into talking about community reaction, is just, I can't express how bad I feel for Anonymo.
It's bullshit. They won a game. Listen, yes, under circumstances they didn't choose, but that's the point. And they almost won the second time, for fuck's sake. Like, literally, that's what made me so disgusted at this community reaction. Because aside from the fact that they tried to spin it on the words and we get to some of this other nonsense about, like, what about isming? When you give, like, totally valid counterfactuals. There was also this whole take of, like, but let's all agree the real victims is NiP. Like,
yeah.
What? They're the ones who got away at the end. They got to win the fucking game.
Yeah.
This is mental.
And actually, one other point that I left off, because Flashpoint fucked up again, because not only was it incompetence on a technical level, it was incompetence on a PR level, massive incompetence on a PR level. Like, the messaging here was ridiculous. Like, somebody should have come out. I might even say maybe Monty. I don't know. He's the commissioner. I don't know what their system looks like, what the hierarchy looks like, because I know Monty has nothing to do with operations, nothing to do with decisions. Hated this decision, publicly said it wouldn't have done it, and he doesn't want teams to just be able to call rematches, willy-nilly. But anyway, all of it was handled badly, but in the tweet, they came out and went, NiP have offered Anonymo the option of playing the full best of 3. And then NiP went, no, we want to have our cake and eat it. We want to be the good guys, even though we're very much not the good guys. Delete that tweet. And so they had to delete that tweet and said, we as the admins have offered that. No. You were right the first time. This wasn't an accident that they worded it that way. NiP drove this whole fucking thing. If you can't see that NiP were driving it, NiP basically came with a list of demands to Flashpoint and said, if we don't get this, the complaints we will issue will ruin your fucking brand, and we will go to Valve and we will do all we can to deprive your business of future opportunities to run tournaments of this stature ever again. They got everything they wanted. It was a hostage situation.
Yes.
So when Flashpoint worded it, NiP have offered them. Yes, NiP offered them. That wasn't a mistake, you morons. Stop getting manipulated. It's like embarrassing. It's like you're an American. Like, well, CNN, CNN wouldn't be biased. Like, oh my God, NiP would never. Of course they do. It's esports. Everyone's in it for self-interest. And the people who aren't, you call them the bad guys. because you're being manipulated.
By the way,
It's ridiculous.
You've actually hit one of my triggers there I'd forgotten about as well. Because here's another thing I want to make abundantly clear. And by the way, the idea pro players are commenting on this situation and pretending like what I'm about to say is nonsense shows that they are a bunch of manipulative cunts who will only ever say what they think will benefit them and never actually the truth. So here's a reality I want to just clue everyone watching this into right now. Ninjas in pajamas, Anonymo, any pro player, you don't make any fucking offers. You have zero jurisdiction.
Yes.
You have zero part to play in deciding cases. You have zero part to play in being the judge who decides what the appropriate punishment is. I don't give a fuck. See, ready, Anonymo, you can get it as well. So I'm hearing this story, but Anonymo agreed to play on the off-Faceit server. Anonymo, you aren't the tournament admin. You don't make deals with teams you're playing with. By the way, that's could even be considered a form of match fixing, you stupid fucking cunts. You do nothing but say yes sir, no sir, and answer the questions asked by the admin. He determines what happens because, as this shows, he carries the can at the end for whatever the result of the match is and whatever the circumstances are. So I don't care if you go when we agreed to play fucking Jenga in a treehouse on a Thursday night. Like, it's irrelevant. You have no fucking say. I don't care if you're device and you won 4 majors. I don't care if you get right and you won 87 games in a row. I don't care if you're a leash and you look like an old shriveled woman from Sedona fucking Arizona. I don't care who you are. The admin, that fucking Dutch guy for fucking Faceit, the guy that was like a better version of Carmack, a guy who works for ESL, knows what he's doing, talks reasonable stuff. They decide what goes on. They're the admins. You're just a daft cunt. So don't give me your shit offers like some sort of fucking one of those bad games that's like, I offer you 2 boxes for this prize. Like, you don't get offers. Survey says no. You get nothing. You lose, sir. You lose, whatever.
You stole because he lifted drinks.
Yeah, exactly.
You've done that to a leash. Like,
someone had to get it. Listen, he hadn't even done anything wrong, so that's just you casualty, you know.
Fucking hell. Right, absolutely on point, mate. So, the fact that there was clearly bargaining chips in play and people were doing offers. Here's the thing. If you were NiP, by the way, why would you ever agree to just one map if you were affected for 3, Why? Like,
the whole thing was all over the place. Yeah. Every fucking... No, the worst thing about this, actually, now I think about it, is not a single actor in this equation was ever bloody just facing the same direction through the whole thing. They were all just swapping positions and who's doing this and like, this is mental, mate. Like, and then at the end, which we're all going to do, all fans, all these people involved, we're all going to pretend we all had a super strong understanding of the rules and that it was obvious from day one what should have happened.
Yeah.
In an incredibly nuanced, like, unique scenario I've never even heard of ever.
So anyway, let's get to the end. They have the replay, they win. Anonymo have to just sort of take that on the chin. Actually, one other point, just before we get to community reaction.
We'll just say though, listen, you have to say this. The one good thing that came out of all this, because here's the thing, always look for the bright side, was my relationship with the Polish community has never been fucking closer. Because when I couldn't believe this, I think I'm manifesting shit again, mate. My whole life is the movie The Lathe of Heaven. I just dream shit and it comes real, like it's mental. Obviously, I used to be just dreaming nightmares. It was terrible. Well, now I'm having a fucking sick time. I wake up, right? I come into the game. Like, this can't be real. His device really like 1-7 at the moment. Like, after all this good shit, it's his old debut as well. They're winning, but he's 1-7. And then I just keep watching it and he's still just fucking shit in the bed the whole way. It's like, this can't be real. Why is this real?
Yeah,
how is this real?
I saw your tweet as well. Like, he must be getting packet loss. Yeah.
There you go.
Or perhaps it's choke. You never turned down a chance to be a cunt, like, I will.
That's why I've never understood. Listen, this is one thing I don't get is this, right? I can actually be manipulated pretty easily, which is because I actually do sort of follow the formal rules of what I consider polite behavior. If someone just, like, for example, if Device just tweeted, like, actually, I apologize for that tweet I made a while back. I was just, I was frustrated. I didn't mean it. And obviously, I do respect you as a professional. This could all stop. Yeah, I'd make jokes and banter. But it's like, why would you ever want to, like, it's like when people hecklers in comedy shows. It's like, mate, that guy's whole gig is destroying motherfuckers like you. Like, why put yourself in the crosshairs?
Yeah, exactly. So look, one other thing I want to bring up, because like I've seen a lot of NiP fans, people with NiP flair. Well, what are NiP supposed to do? Just take it from Flashpoint. Let me tell you the strategy that they should have utilized, but unfortunately, this one is just a bit too subtle for fucking egomaniacs like the people who run NiP. Right? You just simply refuse to play the game.
Yes.
That's it.
You notice I had a similar tweet for the polls, by the way.
Yep.
In my opinion, in both situations, NiP the first time, here's the scenario that beggars belief, Richard. So I'm having constant 40% packet loss. I'd suggest first things first, don't play the game, because then the result might be counted as legitimate. No, but I'm going to have to play. No, just don't. If that's true, don't play the game. Same for Anonymo, by the way. In my opinion, Anonymo had Flashpoint over a barrel, because good luck if I don't play the game and enter the server, disqualifying me from the tournament, give me a forfeit loss, when I won the fucking game on stream. Like, mate, that might even be a legal case at that point. Who the fuck knows? Like, in my opinion, both teams fucked that one up. They didn't actually. Here's the irony. Players who indirectly exerted massive influence never understood the power they had. Literally real power. Don't enter the server. They can't make you play it. They can't.
I remember there was an incident in football. I want to say it was Sheffield United and Arsenal a way back. Steve Bruce and Arsene Wenger. And I think what had happened was a player had gone down with an injury. They'd kicked the ball out so he could get treatment. And then basically the ball, what you're supposed to do there is return the ball to the team that kicked it out. It's not a formal rule, but it wasn't a formal rule, I don't think. I think it was later codified as a rule, but it was just a gesture of sportsmanship. Anyway, some player, I can't even remember who it was, hopefully not Carnu, because I love him, but I can't remember the era. But a player basically didn't understand the convention, took the ball, went up the other end, fucking scored a goal, right? And everyone was like, what the fuck? It's all kicking off. It was Carnu. Shit. Love that guy. But I'm sure he wasn't being malicious. Anyway, Steve Bruce pulled his players off the pitch and said, nah, this is bollocks, mate. Fuck this. And everyone was like, well, this was outrageous. He pulled his players off the pitch. He said, nah, we're not doing it. Come off. And so in the end, they eventually replayed that game from that point with the time that was left. Now, that was hugely unconventional. He could have been docked points for improper conduct, but he made a decision in that moment to say, this is so egregiously bad, we cannot continue. And so my advice to all players is simply, if you ever are in that situation and you're being pressured by a TO, retroactively, so here's what would have happened. NiP say we're not going on the server, right? Flashpoint ops say, well, you have to play now or we're disqualifying you. And you go, well, we can't play like this. You'll have to disqualify us. Yep. Do you think Flashpoint are going to publicly come out and go, hey, guys, bit of bad news about Device's debut. We've disqualified NiP because they refused to play a game. Mate, that's worse than what we've got now.
Yes.
No way. What would have happened is they would have threatened you with disqualification. You would have still not played. They would have gone and had a gaggle and, oh no, what we gonna do? We better get to the bottom of this. It would have lit a fire under their arse. They would have figured out the problem, and you would have played the game at a later date, and we wouldn't be in this fucking mess now. So simply put, you do not play this game in the first place. So there's your strategy for NiP. You don't need to do any macho posturing. You don't need to threaten Flashpoint. You don't need to say you're going to get Valve involved and other teams involved. You don't need to do any of that shit. You just refuse to play the game, and you win. You win.
Yes.
That was all they had to do. But there's nothing satisfying about that. You don't get to morally grandstand. You don't get to make a 20-point post about how really you're the victims and Anonymo are arseholes, actually, and have spread egregious lies about us, which aren't lies at all. We all know exactly what you were doing, by the way. Anyone who's even got a tenuous connection heard the fucking seismic rumblings of what Hitchin was doing behind the scenes. So that's all they had to do. So for anyone who's saying, well, what are NiP supposed to do? I've just told you, right? So you can shut the fuck up with that point, right? NiP could have easily won this without the drama. They chose this path.
There's a point to make here that's a broader point. I keep making it, but none of the players get this, Richard. I've said this point 3 different ways now, which goes like this. If you won't stand up for your own rights and your own self-interest, why the fuck should I go in front of the bullets for you? Why should I do it? You won't do it for yourself. You claim to know this is wrong. You know this would be an injustice if you played the game and, by the way, won or lost, NiP. Did you hear that? Won or lost. But instead, you chose, notice that word, you chose to participate in this, which means you didn't just tacitly, you implicitly agreed with what was happening because you allowed the game to take place. You legitimately lost under conditions you accepted by entering the server, and you have now stolen a victory, however legitimate in terms of the integrity of the actual match. I understand that, but you have stolen a victory from an underdog team who have no recourse to get it back, and only on the basis they are nobodies and and you are somebody's. For fucking shame. I don't care how many death threats you get. That doesn't make what you did right. That does not cancel out what you did. So I agree. In that scenario, it's a broader point. I hope pros understand this. I don't want you to, after the fact, complain something was an injustice. If you know it's unjust, you do not comply. Compliance in this case is the entire thing. Because if you don't enter that server, you can never lose a game that is an illegitimate set of circumstances. All you can do is, as Richard says, be disqualified. And by the way, you wouldn't even have needed any pressure. The whole community would have been on your side.
Exactly.
You couldn't have fucked it up.
Yeah, Flashpoint, there is absolutely no way would have disqualified you. And even if they did it nominally, the community reaction, and by the way, do you know who would have been the first people out? Me and Duncan.
Of course.
Me and Duncan, I would have screamed bloody hell if NiP had been disqualified in those circumstances. And if you think it's some sort of like, because the other thing I've read is, he's got beef with NiP. No, I don't have beef. Did I have beef when NiP was fucking over all its legendary players and not paying them back in the pair Lilifelf days? Yeah, I did. I'm
pretty sure you fuck with all the current players and the coach.
Of course. Listen, like, I'm telling you about how I'm like talking to Device privately while all this drama's going on, trying to give him some advice, trying to big brother him a little bit. I know how hard it is. How did we open the show? Being the center of attention fucking sucks. Having hundreds of people telling you to kill yourself and all this stuff. It fucking sucks. It will get to anyone.
Yes.
People, the cretins that say, you've got a thin skin. You would break if you lived my life for 2 hours.
Think of this. Let me set this up a second.
Yeah.
They're now essentially saying, Richard, that Device, someone who has won almost more than anyone under the most pressure in the history of the Counterstrike franchise, while simultaneously having such a debilitating injury, he has thought of retiring numerous times, and the injury is triggered by stress. This man who went through all that still won all the MVPs, all the majors, all that. At the end, right, he logs onto a free app on the internet, Richard, and suddenly he's thin-skinned. It's weird how nobody can get through this fucking crucible, isn't it? There's nobody. Even the people who are the most loved say, I can't handle the fucking 300 horrible messages. Like, no one can. Your brain cannot. No one's brain can handle it. No one.
You know, and so, like I said, we're going to come to that. We'll put a pin in this. So, anyway, the bottom line is the replay shouldn't have happened. I don't care what the rules say. And for anyone who says, well, this is right, I saw another moron, some fucking lunatic, who one of the people I'm talking about, 500 comments in 2 days about NiP, like just standing for them, like, and everyone up voting, yes, Queen, yes, you know. Idiots, right? Like this guy made a thread saying this is a brilliant precedent for esports because now anyone who plays online in bad conditions can have a rematch after the fact. That would kill esports, by the way.
The end of online competition.
It's the end of no one would host an online tournament not knowing whether they could even get to the end of an online competition in some sort of reasonable amount of time. It would kill esports. That's how much of a cretin that person is, and anyone who upvotes that is a cretin too. If we let people like you make the big decisions in our industry, it would die tomorrow. You have no big picture perspective. All you could think about is, but Daddy Device had bad time and bad ping. And I like it when they win, even though I'm from Germany and have no connection to this team. You're an idiot. Like, the problem of being an idiot is you can never realize you're an idiot. And that's like the worst part, right? And so I'm sympathetic to a degree, but all the other people who come in and go, well, this sounds like a good idea, just think it through. You would have rematch after rematch after rematch. Where would you draw the line? Is it just server problems? Is it ping problems? Is it internet problems? What about when a player drops out because their internet's out? What about how would we have got through the DDoS era in 2014 where all the salty bettors that were fucking losing would just literally DDoS a game out of existence so their bet would be returned? We wouldn't have a scene. It wouldn't exist. It would just be rematch after rematch after rematch, perhaps even rematches of rematches, because you've now set the table. If anything goes wrong online, you're entitled to a rematch. No, this precedent absolutely can't be allowed to stand, and everyone knows it. So do you know what happens after this tournament? You get to the end, Flashpoint are going to change the rules, and the only team that will ever have benefited from this ridiculous ruling will have been fucking NiP at this Flashpoint event. It'll never happen again. It'll never happen again. So take that to the fucking bank when you're talking about, well, you know, the little guys would have got it. I've read so many threads saying, well, Anonymo would have definitely got, no, absolutely not. Let me also just bring up a point about Sponge, because I think we agreed on a lot of stuff. He was on the HLTV podcast. Me and
I didn't
Sponge,
see what he said. What was his
well,
angle?
so basically, for the most part, and it's kind of interesting because one of the things I've noticed in terms of like cultural shift among the subreddit, this is the same, the same community that drove Sponge to delete his account because everyone was attacking him relentlessly. And again, some of the worst abuse I've ever seen. Constant mockery every time he lost the game, didn't understand the pressure he was under when he segued into being an analyst, all the bullshit. Like, well, he couldn't even be a good IGL. How's he going to be a good analyst? Now, like, not only the best analyst that we had, the best caster duo now as well. Just a phenomenally talented, guy, a nice human being, a good human being.
One of the best.
Someone who has Counterstrike's interests at heart. So it's interesting seeing the shift because now everything Sponge says is right, and the hive mind went into a fucking meltdown yesterday because he said the game should never have been played and Flashpoint was bad, but he also said if the replay goes ahead, it's an absolute travesty and one of the biggest travesties in Counter-Strike.
Sounds like a very nuanced individial who understands complicated topics. Yeah.
So the hive mind's but everything Sponge says is right. Sponge says something I disagree with. And the malfunction occurred. And so now people didn't know what to do. Here's where I disagreed with Sponge. Everything else he said, agreed. He said, if I was NiP, I would have used the rules as far as I could push them. I agree with that, by the way. No problem with using the rules to your advantage. Rules are rules after all. If you don't follow the rules, are they rules,
Yes.
But he said, and I would have complained to Valve. Let me tell you why I disagree with that. Bringing Valve to this table is possibly the worst thing that can happen because we all say, well, we wish Valve were more involved. You don't want them to be exclusively involved in matters of incompetence and negativity because the takeaway from them will just be, well, these cunts can't fucking run shit.
Yep.
They are incompetent. I guess we should start putting our foot down and exerting our authority. And let's be real. There are multiple instances that prove actually Valve don't really have their finger on the pulse about what the community wants. Think about the coaching decision. Think about how an entire field of work is essentially compromised. I mean, don't get me wrong, largely in part to cheats and scumbags, but also Valve's own decision. They never liked it in the fucking first place. They made it as difficult as possible to be a job. Fucking tournament organizers had to break rank with what Valve wanted and essentially stand up to the developer. Fortunately, they're a developer that will allow you to do that and not cut you off at the knees, unlike Riot, unlike Activision Blizzard. And so we get to this situation where Chad is saying, I would have complained to Valve straight away. Absolutely not. No.
I think he has too much faith in Valve in that sense. That's a bit naive, mate.
Yeah. What we have to do is show that we can do this stuff by ourselves. What we need from Valve is in-game support. We need game updates to be scheduled around tournaments. We need that 1 million Twitter account to stop posting bullshit memes and post like wicked epic moments. And when tournaments are on, we need something like what they've got for the DPC pack now. If you've seen
They should have had a tweet. Tune in now. Four-time major when a device makes his debut for NiP. Like, where's that tweet?
Yeah, of course. It's not there.
That should be a no-brainer.
Yeah, but look at this funny meme. Look at this sticker. Like, it's ridiculous. That account is one of the biggest disgraces. It's misused so outrageously. It's hard to believe it's Valve. I'd almost think it's a troll. I think actually Valve have nothing to do with that account. But
my personal theory has always been that they actually did what they threatened to do. I'd heard behind the scenes that they took someone who was like a half memer, troll, dickhead, clout chaser, and they just run that account. Because if you look at the way it is, like the idea of Valve employees even coming up with those jokes, I don't know if I buy it, Rich. It feels like they took someone and just told them, look, you'll never be allowed to say who you are, but
it's almost like it's been hacked. You do. But anyway, so if you go to Valve and Valve get involved and they go, well, this fucking Flashpoint can't run RMRs. Can anyone run an RMR? Can only ESL run RMRs? Yeah, maybe we just give everything to ESL. Maybe we give them a de facto monopoly, which is kind of what they already have. No. We can't keep bringing Valve to the table every time we fuck up. We've got to fix this shit ourselves. So I was in line with Chad, but I think that point is like so unbelievably like short-sighted. I've seen what developers do in other scenes. I've seen Riot Games. They're doing it now in Valorant. If you're a player and they don't like you, you don't have a career. If you're a caster, you don't have a career. There's only one place to play, one place to commentate, and if you're not in with them, they fucking end you. And I don't even just mean, by the way, they don't hire you. No, they proactively go to their partners and all this other stuff. They've done some of the most shady shit behind the scenes to talent they don't like or consider troublemakers. Not to mention, just in general, they just airbrush people out of fucking history as is convenient on a whim. And Activision Blizzard do the exact same shit. So I don't want that for my game, and nobody should want to bring Valve to the table in this situation. This was fixable on multiple stages, but everyone was a cunt here, in my opinion. And even now we'll segue into community reaction.
Yes.
Even Anonymo to a certain degree, not much. I really feel sorry for the players, but let's get into the community reaction. Some of the most ridiculous, predictable, easily, cynically manipulated stuff I've ever seen. And basically, if you ever want a textbook case of just how social media is just rots the brain and destroys the pathways for critical thinking, it's absolutely this. Because on day one, when it happens, it's fuck NiP, right? Then, halfway through day one, segueing into day two, suddenly it's, well, actually, no, not fuck NiP. Look, read this point-by-point reply from NiP. Now it's fuck Flashpoint. Then, right, we're strong uptake for the fuck Flashpoint, right? And keep in mind, on day one, device hate. People are spewing outrageous shit at him, right? Outrageous shit. Then Flashpoint. Then people are spewing outrageous hate at even people like Monty. Outrageous stuff, right? He's got nothing to do with his decision. Yeah, he's the commissioner, but he has nothing to do with League Ops. He deliberately recused himself. He tried to be as professional as possible. Then people were going after Flashpoint admins. Then we get to what, like day 3? Then it's Anonymo who are the cunts, because some unrelated DMs from their fucking manager got leaked in a Polish publication, and it was him on Discord going, we've waited 60 minutes for NiP, the rules say this, you need to penalise them and forfeit the game, or at least take their timeouts away or something, right? And so as a result, people are going, oh, well, look, Anonymo said that NiP were gaming the rules, but look at them following the rules, so Anonymo are bad.
And did the rules be upheld?
Yeah, like the defensive. This is how dumb these people are. Their defensive NiP was it's in the rules. Now look at Anonymo trying to uphold the rules. Like, what are you doing? But no. So we had a day of NiP, a day of Flashpoint. Then we move across to a day of hate and Anonymo. Well, look, I mean, you know, all these and then talent, just random vitriol and bile. Yep. I did a tweet saying Anonymo wouldn't have got this. They wouldn't have got this. I've just outlined all the reasons why. Keep in mind, I have actual knowledge of what went on behind the scenes as this was happening. Knew this was happening 24 hours before it was public, and that can be independently verified. And so there was loads of hate in my tweet. Like, you can imagine. I mean, first of all, there's still people who are like, yeah, some fucking YouTuber might notice my Reddit comment, even though he's got the good sense to not wade through the shit that is the esports community. So they're just in there. But then, obviously, other people are going, Richard Lewis, this hypothetical helps nothing. Yeah, let's never do another hypothetical from now until the end of time, shall we? Let's just blindly walk into stuff without thinking about possible outcomes ahead of time. I like that. What happens if I step on this rake? Oh, my nose is broken. Are you people fucking real? Like, I can't even get on your, like, I would need to cut half my brain out with a spoon to be on the same intellectual level as you. And I don't consider myself exceptional in any way, shape, or form. I just consider you to be so far below the intellectual level humanity should be at in 2021, the year of our Lord. It's hard for me to connect with you people.
That's where you know that people literally are grasping at straws, is when they have to go to the angle of, let's existentially discuss whether this needs to happen as a conversation. Like, what the fuck level are you on? So basically, my comment is so legitimate and accurate. You have to just debate about what the highest order of good for all humanity would be in a conversation. Like, that's almost on the level, if people want a great example. If I remember being at an event, I think it was actually like a fucking face it, like that might have been the one that might have even been the infamous Hell in a Cell one. I remember there was an event where like a terrorist attack, this is why I can't narrow it down, sadly. There was like a terrorist attack somewhere. It was either Belgium or France or somewhere, and it happened during the event. So while I was at the event, tweeting, Richard, about the games I am watching on the fucking stream, like, oh, Envious is winning, people are just replying to me on Twitter, think there's more important things to be tweeting about in the world. It's like,
Yeah.
you're actually mentally ill, mate. Like, I don't know any other way to break this to you, but you are deeply mentally unwell. Because by your own logic, aren't there more important things for you to do than be fucking messaging me? What is this?
Crazy, right? So anyway, you know, So people don't even understand the purpose of the thought experiment. The purpose of the thought experiment wasn't just to do a fucking pointless thought experiment apropos of nothing. It was to basically state quite clearly.
It's about the precedent that was being set. Yeah, of course.
Think about why this is happening. Please just think about that. And of course, people didn't. I saw Yanko getting dunked on.
All he did, by the way, was do basically like the same point you did, but he didn't even have any basis for people to think he was making any other point.
Attributed it to me. And go look at that thread, right? And it's going, well, if Yanko agrees with man-child Richard Lewis, right? By the way, my wrestling name, Mr. Socko, man-child, he's back again. Like, it's man-child, by God, right? Like, all Yanko did was express a thought attributed to me, and people were going, yeah, Yanko's a cunt. He's a cunt. What would he know? What would he know about the hardships of being a pro player? Didn't he fail as a coach? Here's 50 things that have nothing to do with anything that I'm just going to bring up, right? So it's like, oh, by the way, totally fine for you to do your fucking, thought exercises about people's careers. Well, what if you did? Yeah, that's fine. You can fucking speculate wildly with your little Reddit account. Anyone in the business with like actual insider knowledge and information does a little bit of speculation or a thought exercise, even with the express purpose of hinting to you there's more to this than meets the eye. You people can't. Oh, it's outrageous. How dare he? So then there was Snacks got it. Because after the win, Snacks did a tweet saying, well, with the game being 16-14, I think we can see the extent of the packet loss problem. Words to that effect. I am paraphrasing. Which, by the way, was an absolutely legitimate thing to say.
True.
And funnily enough, Snacks' opinion, Snacks being hurt, Snacks having a historic victory taken away from him, which we now know isn't a fluke because they beat Hyenas today. Kiebe's team, essentially the core of North. We know this is a legit team now, and we know Snacks is playing well within that team. No one thinks about him. No one thinks about how important it is for a man who's been in the fucking wilderness for 3 fucking years, who hasn't been playing particularly well, who literally isn't making the money he was even fucking used to, right? What? You don't think he wants to, like, go to the major, do you not? You don't think he has any feelings? Well, evidently no, because in the Reddit thread, how dare Snacks pour gasoline on this fire? He's got a legitimate grievance, you fucking melt. Don't you understand? So if Device can tweet angrily about playing on the packet loss, and we go, why will no one listen to Dever? Why can't Snacks say, I didn't want to play in this fucking replay, it's absolute bullshit? Why can't he express that fucking opinion? Like, what you have done in this instance is just the lowest common denominator bullshit. And that is that because your brain cannot process Device has a point, Snacks has a point, Talent has a point, NiP has a point, Flashpoint has a point, right? You can't process all of that. Because the only book you've read in your life is Harry fucking Potter, you need a Voldemort and you need a little brave boy who lived in the cupboard under a fucking house and he only had to eat shoes. I've never read the book. I don't even fucking know. Who gives a fuck? Right?
I thought you talked about Device for a minute there. Keep going.
Yeah, he's the Harry Potter now in this situation, isn't he? Even though he's been a petulant cunt from the get-go. I don't remember that. I don't remember Harry Potter and the fucking dog shit tweet. I don't remember that. I don't remember Harry Potter and the victim complex. I don't remember that book. I don't think it ever got published in it. So, but because they have to think in these fucking terms, that's what you get. So immediately, you can't say, I feel sorry for Snacks and Device, and this whole shit show was bad for all players involved. You have to go, Snacks is Voldemort. He is casting black magic in Device's face with this, but you fucking morons. You empty-headed morons.
By the way, I'm also not going to tolerate for 1 second, because you know this is a trigger of mine anyway, the notion that if let's say I criticize someone, like I don't like the fact that NiP forced a rematch, somehow that makes me complicit with someone who isn't me, never met me, never talked to me, not related to me, I've never communicated with them, sending a message to Device, kill yourself. Why am I complicit in that?
Yeah. Like,
that is a ridiculous premise.
And let's get to this point, right? So, in other terrible tweets, and Sam, if you want to bring it up, you can pull it off my Twitter feed because I screenshotted it. Because, right, I even said this to Device. I even said it to him.
This was amazing, though. We're going to get some comedy gold out of this, I can tell in a minute. Just set this up. Go on. Because it's too good. Like, it's like some satire or something, isn't it? It's amazing. Right. I know.
So I even said to him, whatever you do, if you win, nobody tweet. I even said, tell your guy who runs the NiP account, do not post the result. It didn't happen. It did happen, but let's pretend it didn't. And let's just move the fuck on. Let's compartmentalize this like a fucking trauma. You know what I mean? Let's just put that away to one side. It's been a mess from start to finish. Let's get to the fucking finish here. But no. Unfortunately, whether it's a byproduct of the pressure he's under, which I totally respect, and I feel very sorry for him.
Maybe a sprinkle of narcissism as well.
But maybe also Harry Potter and the narcissist's complex.
Harry Potter and the enormously enlarged size of whatever.
Yeah,
state of entitlement or whatever, yeah.
Right? He's done a tweet afterwards.
This is unreal, isn't it? It's so good. Put it this way, if you actually wanted to craft the most subtle way to trash talk and shit stomp someone whose heart and soul you just ripped out in the game, you couldn't do a better job than this tweet. It's actually perfect in a way.
He tweeted, probably the worst I felt throughout a game. I'm proud of my new team, but this is the first time I've been sad after a win. GG, WP, Anonymo esports. You didn't deserve this, and you are a great team. Hope to play you many more times in the future. Now, this tweet, whether he knew it or not in that moment, has essentially made him the victim.
Of course.
When he is the sole, well, not the sole, but one of a small group of beneficiaries of unprecedented esports favoritism, essentially.
It's weird. This felt like when Hillary Clinton did that infamous tweet where she goes, of course, women are the real victims of war. And it's like, listen, Hillary, I even get the point you're trying to make, but by definition, I imagine the people who actually died, they're probably going to feel like they have a better case. Yeah. So similarly, if your device, essentially, I know he wasn't totally trying to tweet this. There was a tiny bit of narcissism, but that tweet did read to me like, you know what? Bloody hell. Of all the games I've won, and I've won a lot of games, including this one, which I actually had no merit to even have a rematch in, I'm so sad. In fact, you know what? In many ways, I'm the victim, even though I've won. So please feel sorry for me. The winner of this game, this absolute travesty, injustice that should never have happened. Because you know what? It gets me down when I don't just get all positives out of winning.
Right. Now,
just stop. Please stop. Please.
I know. As I said, you're doing the thing I said, don't do.
So nuts, isn't it?
I know. So all you had to do was walk away from the Twitter account, step away from the phone. That's all you had to do.
I understand how ridiculous this self-awareness is that I'm saying this, but sometimes just think, is a tweet going to help here?
Yeah, I know. But
could a tweet ever make this better?
I always think, as you run one of the worst Twitter accounts in esports, I think when you say something like that, it actually has more impact.
It should.
I think it actually has more impact, mate.
Yes.
So anyway, I just want to, Sam, if you can bring this up, I just want to shout out my boy Jeremy who sent me this. This tweet fucking buckled me.
I know which one this is. I know.
Because the fundamental fucking problem you got is, that's the most sad I've ever felt in a game. It was a solemn affair. You're on camera, mate. You're 14, on camera.
I know, this is all good, isn't it?
And so my boy Jeremy 6436021. I always love it. First name bunch of numbers, the old Twitter classic. He just sent me this rare footage of device crumbling with sadness after.
Just watch this. Just watch.
Just play it. So I don't even need a 3, 2, 1. Just fucking play this. Oh, this.
Someone should really take that and do a slow-mo version and do like his internal dialogue, like, "Oh, this is killing me inside. Yeah. Oh, I can't handle it. The anguish, the pain. What not more feeling. Yeah. I'm so sad right now."
Playing Enya over it. Who can say? Anyway, look. The point with that is that's just a bit of fun. Obviously, you're going to celebrate a win.
Yeah,
the mockery comes from the terrible tweet. What I'm not going to mock is the reaction to the terrible tweet, because never Never since.
I literally hope he logged off the second he made that tweet. I hope he did not ever click that mentions button, mate.
Yeah. Not since the incident where you had to leave Katowice have I seen so many outrageous.
I imagine he had a few
fans.
similar invites to Krakow, if people know the reference,
Mate,
you know.
It was outrageous. It was outrageous. And unfortunately, it went off like a bushfire. Like, usually if you make a bad tweet, you have like a state of grace period where it's not too late to get out. No, this was immediate. And I think Device probably hasn't come to terms because, you know, he did an interview where he was saying, I'm trying to getting away from Denmark to escape the fame. I get recognized all the time. I don't think he realizes that esports is bigger than even he can conceive of, and he won't get away from the fame in Sweden. Certainly not playing for ninjas. If anything, I think you might be under a bigger microscope and more likely to be recognized.
Here's one thing I think he hasn't thought about, which understandably, because you could never anticipate this backlash no matter how silly the tweet's phrasing was, is listen, mate, obviously he didn't do what I did, but I tell you what, mate, I feel bad for you when there's a LAN in Poland next, mate. When they have that next Katowice, it ain't going to be fun for you. Because all it takes is the right 10 people can fuck your whole event up.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah, listen, and you know, he's going to be in a situation I don't want him to be in.
In fact, you know what? I'll even say this. Bearing in mind, all Device did is just like he inappropriately or like impolitely phrased the tweet in a way that could be misread, right? I genuinely hope if there's a big LAN in Poland anytime in the next like year, I'm telling you, whoever invited, say it's ESL, right? Let's say it's ESL Katowice. I'm telling you right now, Carmack, you're not obliged to do this, but if you are a fucking man, you will have Taz, Pasha, if you get a full bunch of the boys together, go out in front of the crowd on day one and tell them all, if Device plays, no one is going to fucking tell him they'll kill him. No one's going to do that. We're just going to listen, boo him if you want, but you're going to treat him with respect. Literally, I would say, like, if you're just a good human, do that, because no one deserves the backlash that this could potentially cause years down the line when we might have forgotten about it, you know.
Yeah, and look, remember, you know, for all we're saying, Anonymo are like little guys. Like, this was considered an affront to the whole of Poland. Snacks is still an incredibly popular player. And so, you know, again, I'm trying to make light of it. There were people sending me videos of them burning NiP jerseys. Like literally, like I even did a tweet which I deleted because the problem was now, and this is what I mean about the blowback being bigger than you can conceive of. A Polish fan was tagging Get Right Forests, and you guys were legends in this country, but your org has shamed you. Now, Forrest and Get Right have done fuck all, but he was burning this NiP jersey with a blowtorch, and then like he sent me a DM. The guy who did it was going, I am deleting my video of me burning because I realized I should not be angry at Forrest and Get Right. My emotions got better of me. I'm like, cool. Don't know why you're telling me, tell your diary, but whatever. And so, yes, this has utterly inflamed passions. It's completely unacceptable. Device should not have to deal with even a fraction of the messages he's got. But then we arrive at the last station on the Reddit circle jerk. For when there is no one left to hate, we must call out hate itself. You cretins, you predictable cretins. And so what did we get? NiP seizing one last desperate opportunity with a judo move to do the fucking PR, the PR classic. Now listen, guys, death threats are never acceptable. We're all passionate. We're all the same. We all love the game. Like, that's the manager of NiP. We are, you know, like, it's like that fucking scene from, like, what's that movie called? Like, Enemy Mine, where it's the dude and the alien in the war and they get stranded on a planet and all that, and they all have to make friends, like a overblown Twilight Zone episode. But it's like, we are the same deep down. Like, we get it, right? Yeah, like, kumbaya, yeah, fucking whatever. But, so, and I agree with your point, by the way. None of this excuses, like, not right. The death threats suck. Yeah, cool. But what you're doing is you're trying to go, see, we're the good guys. Look, everyone hates us. You did do something egregiously, outrageously unacceptable and behaved like cunts behind the scenes and Device disrespected tournament admins. And, you know, you haven't covered yourself in glory, and all the crying about death threats in the world shouldn't get you out of that. The death threats are bad. I condemn them universally. But at the end of the day, crying about the death threats, for which you haven't ponied up the receipts, but I know they're real because I fucking saw them myself.
Couldn't believe it.
Yeah. you know, at the end of the day, that shouldn't ever be the excuse you get used to wriggle out. But then, because esports is populated with narcissists and the deluded, the players are going, I too have been the victim of hate. And so the players came out and said, wow, guys, and Olaf's tweet, wow, guys, hate bad. Remember, there is a human being at the other end of the nickname. And Olaf, and I'm going to say some shit, I know you disagree with this, but I'm fucking saying it anyway. Olaf coming out going, when I did the Olaf boost, I nearly considered quitting competitive play. Right. Just some thoughts on that. Not really the same, is it? Because what you did as players was, for those who weren't there at the time, which I was even at the event, I watched the whole thing, right? It's the first time I've seen teams race the forfeit to desperately win the PR battle, right? What you did, Olaf, is not like what Device did. What you did, your team, specifically the players, you found essentially a bug in a game. That's what it was. I know it could happen, but for me, it was an exploit that was never intended. It was
probably the craziest bug ever.
Yeah. It was, you found a YouTube video with it in. You had your manager tell the person whose YouTube video it was to delete it. You then used that information to essentially cheat against an opponent in a competitive environment. Whether or not you consider it cheating, I guess, is a semantic argument. I certainly do. And I wrote an article at the time, and my view hasn't changed or tempered with time. Fnatic were utterly to blame for that. It was reprehensible behavior. They should have told Valve as soon as they noticed it and used their influence to ensure a level competitive playing field. Essentially, Olaf, you were willing to bend the rules beyond what anyone else had access to win a game, and you specifically saved it until you faced your toughest opponent.
The way it was used was also very simple. Like that will obviously inflame.
You didn't do it on day one when you were banging out shitters. You waited until you had the hard game and busted it out then. So listen, mate, you deserved some fucking criticism for that. I personally think it was tantamount to cheating. I don't give a fuck. The community go, no, the reaction was bad. You've just gone on the player glory train. You just went on the player glory train. That's all you've done. You're not analysing it without thinking it was fanatic and this involved. Imagine being a team turning up to a tournament. You're playing tough opposition. You've prepared, and they just bust something out. We're not talking about an incredible strat, right? We're talking about a fundamental broken part of the game, and we know it was broken because it got removed. So, yeah, fuck that. Right? It's like, oh, look, you used to be able to do flash boosts up into the skybox in Source. That was in the game. You could do it and run around and shoot people in the heads, and they couldn't see you, and you couldn't stop them, right? You could do that in the game. Good luck busting that out at a fucking tournament and not getting disqualified or penalised in some way. Idiots. Anyway, so now we get to the community, and they're going, yeah, hate's bad, isn't it? Hate's bad. Yep. I agree. What Device has gone through, this crucible, it's unacceptable. Olaf's right. Get right. Who was he talking to? Kenny S? Yeah, it's really bad when players get hit. I can't even believe this conversation is happening on Reddit. Of all places. On Reddit.
That is all you guys do.
On Reddit. And I'm going to head an argument.
Here's all you need to know about the CSGO sub. If someone says something, not even vaguely in the way that me and Richard talk, not even vaguely making some specific, they just make a general point like, I've never found Richard Lewis to be that bad. The joke which people always go to is, nice alt, Richard, because that's literally how like ludicrous it would be that anyone would say a reasonable thing in these comment threads. Like they're just hate threads. That's all they are.
Yeah. So let's head off one argument right at the get-go, because it's the dumbest argument you can make as a counter to this point. And that is that it's not all the same people, man. Community of 1 million people. Forget the fact that Reddit operates on a consensus mechanic. So
by default.
If you operate within a community and a community arrives at a consensus, whether or not you're in the room, it is fair to say the community feels a certain way about a certain topic. However, right, I've just seen a net 3,000 upvoted thread, right? About, oh, Olaf's right, we shouldn't insult players. God, when will the hate end? When? Like a member of the fucking KKK saying racism's fucking bad, you idiots. Reddit is the absolute dregs of social media, because what happens on Reddit is when something blows up, it bleeds into everything else. People come to your come to your Twitter account, people come to your DMs, people go to your employers. Reddit is a poison that wrecks everything else, essentially.
The analogy, we've done it before, but it's the obvious one, is this would be the equivalent of a live stream fails thread. Like, oh, it's tragic what everyone else did to Etika.
Yeah,
it's like, motherfucker, would you look in the mirror?
I know. Mate, we're gonna get dark with it, because I'm gonna tell people some hard fucking truths this episode. I made a promise to myself that I was gonna say it, and I'm gonna say it. So basically, right, you've got 3,000 people net, so perhaps more than 3,000, right? They all agree hate is bad. Do you know how Reddit works? Let me tell you, someone who regularly has stuff submitted to Reddit. The first 10 upvotes will absolutely dictate whether or not content gets to the front page or dies in new queue, right? They made that change because they wanted to stop power users essentially being able to tweet out and brigade, because Reddit was so dumb and so sanctimonious about their own TOS. The idea that sharing your content on their platform had to be purely organic, and if you linked to Reddit off any other website, you were violating their TOS. And they even used their business influence to try and get other platforms who operate independently of them to agree to, like, sort of take on board their TOS as some sort of sacrosanct fucking biblical command we all have to adhere to. So, oh look, he's linking on Twitter. Yeah, you can't link on Twitter. Why are you enforcing Twitter rules on Reddit? Not even as a Reddit, and Reddit staff members agree with this, because it's one mentally ill cult. And by the way, I'm not even going to get into what happened recently with that fucking employee that they had to bin, right?
Unreal, wasn't it?
That'll be coming to a stream soon, straight fire, because Reddit is a fucking shithole and has a terrible history when it comes to child protection and all sorts. The idea these cunts are ever going to lecture me or anyone else about what a good site it is. And to get banned off Reddit, you have to be a bad person. Yeah, they employ pedophiles, though. So I guess, what does that tell you? It's all right, mate. I don't want to belong to that club. Thank you very much. If that's all right with you. I'm glad that I'm considered to be the bad guy if that's the company you keep. And fuck everyone employed by that dog shit company forever. Not just because they ban me, not just because they have a real fucking problem. And if I was the American government, I would be independently auditing that company, because I know for a fact if you turn over a few stones there, God knows what you will fucking find.
For sure.
But anyway, let's forget that for a moment. So Reddit bleeds into everything else. The way the content works is 10 net upvotes. If you have 100% by the first 10 votes, you're going to the front page. So it would only take 10 of you who feel so passionately about hate being a bad thing, right? You're there. When will the hate end? Here's how it ends. You see a hate thread, you downvote it. That's it. You click one button. You don't even have to make a comment, and then you walk away, and they would never go to the front page again. You don't do that. Do you know why you don't do that? Because you don't give a shit. It's nice when you see a thread going, won't somebody think of this person who I happen to like? What you mean is the hate must stop when it is a popular player or personality, right, who suddenly finds themselves in a weird situation. Reddit utterly plays favorites, and you utterly have a group of people at any given moment in time you will kick the shit out of every opportunity you get. And I'm going to list some now, and I'm going to start talking about what your end goal actually is. Now, when you say, is he talking to me here? If this doesn't apply to you, like everything else, it doesn't apply to you. Think about the Ricky Gervais example. I don't want guitar lessons, right? You wouldn't do that, would you? So if it doesn't apply to you, just take this as a life lesson, not a critique. But I know it applies to some of you listening right fucking now, and you better get on board with it. Right, so you have a series of favorites that you will forgive for even their wildest transgressions. Again, saw this recently. Certain people can say certain things and do certain things and create content around certain things, and you will utterly allow it. Not only allow it, you will give some demented charitable interpretation to excuse it, because you like them, you like their content, right? It's how fandoms essentially work. You will excuse anything they do. On Reddit right now, on a daily basis, there are 5 to 6 hate threads on a daily basis. So the idea that, but there's someone behind the nickname, now that Olaf's saying it, we're going to get on board with that. Let's talk about some of the people you kick the shit out of. We'll come to me and Duncan in a minute, right? How many threads do I have to read about Semler? Right?
I've always said, mate, what really clues you into the mentality of these people is, even though I don't agree for obvious reasons, I at least vaguely get where they're coming from on why they would react to us. But the ones that give it away every time, Richard, is when you call out Anders, when you hit fucking Yanko, like these people are not in any way, they're not even attempting to be incendiary or inflammatory. They're not doing any of that. Basically, they're the real canaries in the coal mine that show this is just a toxic community, innit?
And don't say, by the way, it's different people, because even if it was different people, remember, those people who feel so strongly about it can downvote these threads. We'd never see them. You'd never see them, right? Yep. So they are not
happens to content, obviously, so it works.
Yeah, exactly. You'll sit in new...
The right 10 nutters can get rid of real good content.
Yes,
for real.
and they do. And they do. And we talked about some of them last episode. And you're still upvoting and pandering to these people and fueling their mental illness, which is going to have a... Trust me, it doesn't end well for people like that.
Agreed.
Right? So I wish you wouldn't, but whatever. So I'm going to talk about Semler, right? And I can't tell his story and his life story. But I don't know what it would do to me if I'd gone through what he went through, and I went through one of the darkest times in my life. Coming in, like 2020 was like a year where I didn't think I was going to make it, frankly. I honestly thought, like, I'm just going to wait for an opportune moment and just top myself. And all my friends know I felt this way. I've always been very upfront about my feelings about life and quality of life, and it's quality, not quantity, right? Like, you know, it's a scientific thing that I believe, you know, about euthanasia. I don't think it should be illegal. I've got a very clear view on it. And, you know, what you end up having to think about is when is a good time. And me, it'll all be about timing, right? That's it. So I can't imagine. I went through one of the darkest times in my life, right? In 2020, like literally on the precipice, on the edge, alcoholism, addiction to fucking pills, and can't sleep, nightmares, constantly in a fucked up fever dream, trying to work through it. Like, it was hard. It was tough. Semler went through something that eclipses even my own struggles, right? And I can't talk about it because it's his story. Yes. He went through that and was literally still going to events while that was happening. He was going out there every time, front and center. And
the ultimate show must go on guy, basically.
Yes, right? And every single show, there would be someone. Do you think Semler's lost a bit of his fire? He was going through hell in his personal life. And every day, because we all do it, and we all say we shouldn't, he would go on that fucking subreddit just to read the news, see what was going on, and there would be that front page thread, Semler. And it's his name, so you click on it, don't you? Wonder what people are saying. And there you all were, all upvoted, all popular, you all loved it. And it's there now, still to this day. Does anyone think Semler sounds jaded? He's been super unprofessional. I'm seeing people doing that thing where you invent a narrative in your brain and you think it's real. Yeah, you can tell Semler hates James Bardolph. You're doing all this stuff.
They never write about those ones. I've noticed whenever it's the interpersonal relationships of the talent, who they think of, by the way, they think we're the cast of Friends and that we're just imaginary characters. They are always so far off the point. The classic example we always used to give is back in 2015 when I was at the peak of like everything was a roast. Obviously, Anders, because he's just a guy who just goes along with the fucking group. He, as you've noticed, Anders doesn't mind you roasting him. Basically, he thinks it's funny. As a result, no joke, there used to be so many mentally ill people who would just say, you could just tell by the look on Anders' face, he hates stuff. Like, you have to understand, Anders is one of these motherfuckers who like looks forward to when me and him are at an event next, so we can just talk fucking bollocks about like conspiracy theories and shit. Like, you were so far off the reservation on that. Like, I'd just go ahead and maybe like just imagine you don't know these people. They're just on camera, guys. So
the abuse I see Semler take on a daily basis on subreddit is outrageous, and I am telling you, it hurts him, right? So if you still want to participate in that, I'm not talking about critique and going, I'd rather listen to this guy, or I don't think he's ready. I am talking about when you start crafting these narratives about he's shit, he's washed up, he's only here for the money. He loves this game. He's given his life to this game. He's one of the greatest casters of all time. He was devastated.
He could have stayed in Overwatch League, by the way. I guarantee you.
Of course he could. He was devastated at the criticism he was getting at that time in his life and having to go and play another game. It's inhuman what you did to that man. Like, really, fuck all of you. Scum. Anyone who engages in that, you are scum. And listen, I know it probably doesn't apply to 99%. If you're one of those people, have a fucking think about your life. And let's talk about another guy, Pimp. We all love kicking the shit out of Pimp, right? Every time he's on the analysis desk, why is he getting hired? He's shit. He knows nothing about the game. One of the greatest Danish players of all time, like played abroad, played in all levels. Look at him, bong eye. Like, just now you're abusing his personality. Like he's had to come out and address that. Yes, I am cross-eyed. He's had to tweet about that multiple times.
He even does it inspirational, like his whole weight loss, the eye thing. He makes it actually into a fucking like almost a positive to give like kids fucking hope that you're not just written off in society, doesn't he?
But because he has the fucking temerity to occasionally get upset when he loses a game on his stream to his audience and try and make it entertaining and calls people shit or arseholes or cunts, you know, something that the game will break anyone's brain. Any competitive pursuit will do it in the heat of the moment. You don't give him any of that. And so, you know, how many pimp threads have there been? People with literal parasocial relationships with him making a long, elaborate threads about why he shouldn't be allowed to work for the Blast. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. And then I'll talk about Duncan. I've read some fucking unbelievable stuff about Thorin down the years, stuff I know not to be true. And again, I think one of the myths is that me and Duncan are like joined at the hip. We're not. We you know, we're there for each other when we need to be there for each other, but we're very busy in our personal and private lives. And we're very work-oriented and goal-oriented, and while I won't speak for you while you're here, I think much like me, you think now in terms of legacy and what you leave.
Sure.
Yeah, not so much what you're doing on a day-to-day. It's like that's what keeps me going. And again, you know, attacking him on, you know, the like grotesquely exaggerating disorders you might be claiming he has, completely rewriting history. And obviously I'll bring myself to the table. I mean, I've seen people doing it to Monty a lot as well since he's involved in CS, but you know, I'll bring myself to the table. The things I've read about myself, guys, it's like I don't know what to tell you. I've got no integrity. I'm positively harmful. I've had people intimate I'm somehow embroiled in the death of my best friend. I mean, I am talking the most vile shit you wouldn't want to read. And don't say, or don't just read Reddit, because let me tell you what you fucking scumbags do. When that goes to the front page and you click upvote because you think it's a bit of juicy drama, right? And I'm in 5 dramas a fucking week because I express 5 opinions a fucking week. Those people come to my Twitter. They DM me. I'm a journalist. My DMs are open so I can help people. I can't even use my DMs anymore. I can't. There are people I go through retroactively. There are people who've like, Richard, help me with this contract. Can you? I can't. Sorry. It's 30 days ago now. I'm sorry I wasn't there. But I've got 5,000 fucking molding Brazilians telling me to kill myself today. So, you know, people email Summit. I'm working the Summit right now. Why? You should be working the Summit. You shouldn't. You all coordinate on Discord, so the timing's good. I've got people saying I'm in the alt-right. But I've got people saying they're going to kill me at events. By the way, even now in this current climate, intimating I am anywhere associated with a far-right group, it has a real chance of getting me assaulted, attacked, murdered. There's nothing there to validate any of this, right? Like, there's no history at all, but you'll run with it. And you let and the mods on the Reddit, they just allow it every day. Just mentally ill people. Yeah, he's in the right. 6 months of Breitbart. Yeah, he's can't carry a member. You allow all of that. So let me tell you why this happens. And this is the dark part of the episode, guys. Let me tell you why it happens. And I've written this down, and you don't believe it, but it's true. These people want their targets to kill themselves.
Yes.
100%, absolutely, completely accurate. Their lives, to them, are some sort of like, at best, dull, and at worst, are actually really disappointing. They are not satisfied with their own existence. And as a result, to feel empowered and feel strong, like a lot of weak people in life, they need to leverage what strengths they have to push somebody else down. And the mob realizes it can operate anonymously, and it can operate with many cells, many numbers, and there are no consequences for what you do. I would need to hire private detectives, work with, you know, just to get one person who threatened to kill me. I have to file a police report. I have to get the record subpoenaed from Twitter. I couldn't do it, guys. If I started reporting everyone who said they were going to kill me to the police, the rest of my life wouldn't have even touched 2% of it. And so Trust me, I know what you all want. I know you want me to work the major and have someone jump out the crowd and stab me. I know that you want me to get so fucking depressed and blue that one day you just log on, Richard Lewis found dead at 40 or whatever, you know, killed himself. You guys want that. I know you want that. The people who are involved in this, you'd fucking love it. You would jump for joy. In fact, you would tell stories on your Discord about how it was definitely your comment that pushed people over the edge. And you're going to go, Richard, mate, you're fucking mad. You're off the reservation with this. Do you know how I know this? Because I've seen it. I have seen it. I have seen content creators who have sadly passed away to the spectre of suicide, who took their own lives despite being surrounded by adoring fans and seemingly having a great life. I've seen the people that were literally hours before they did it making a thread. Hey, look, he's off his meds. He's lost his mind. And then when he dies, they go, oh, shit. And they either delete their comments like the cowards they are, or they log on to an alt and say how sad it is. Secretly joyous about the power they have exerted to change reality, that they have essentially pushed someone out of existence to make themselves feel better about their own. And every public figure lives with that. The fact that if you have an opinion, it will divide, and if it's divided, nothing is proportionate. These people, for the temerity of having opinions they don't like, criticizing players they love, criticizing teams they identify with, those people would honestly, if they could get away with it, they would do me serious harm, and ideally, they would rather, to absolve them of any guilt or self-reflection, they would rather I committed the harm to myself.
I actually genuinely, I've got two analogies I would draw, because I'm sure one's the fictional one, so you might be able to relate to that. One's just a matter of fact in reality. So I'm sure people might be able to relate, at least from movies, with the premise that in the way that if boys often don't like another boy, they might physically bully him. There have been many cases where girls just character assassinate someone. So the example would be, you know, the new girl moves to school. She's just really buttoned up, like very like conservative type individual. So you just spread a lie that she fucked the whole football team. She has herpes. And in doing so, by the way, when that girl, in 2 years from then, maybe even you set up a whole prank, you know, and fuck her over on the prom night. If she then kills herself, you all will lie again publicly and go, oh, so sad. Yeah, I always thought she had problems. But secretly inside, there's a fucked up party is getting off on it and loving it. And my analogy for the men in the room would be this. These people are like the main character in that Joker movie. That's what they think their job is. The reason why when they see the comment, they don't just go, well, I'll just comment here on Reddit, or I'll just talk to my friends about it. The reason they have to go to Richard is because they're like that character. They think they're like the Punisher, that their job is they're the only one who can come, and because their life's dog shit, they can waste their time trying to make his life worse for 1 second. And if they do so, if they feel like they got that little prick through the thick skin, they feel like, I did something, I affected the world. Yeah, he'll think twice about what he's done there, not realizing you are just a mentally ill individual. Bleed. Yeah. And that's no, except here's the analogy. As Richard said, I don't get as mad, by the way, at those people as I do at the general community. Because the general community does still want to claim that they care about mental health and that, you know, don't players. So my problem is this. That little dickhead on his own, even with all his friends on his Discord, could maybe get 20 upvotes, which, by the way, would be destroyed by your downvotes. But you don't. Your version of the Joker is like when he went on that show and, spoiler, shot the guy, as if the whole audience just applauded, like, yay! Brilliant, yeah! Like, that's you. That's who you are. You're the one who enabled, and then after enabling it, bigged it up and made it even worse. Because those guys can't exist without you upvoting them, without you tacitly going. And this is the problem. Most of your upvoting aren't anywhere near where these guys are in terms of mental state. Most of you aren't even commenting. But your mistake you're making is this, is you are in such a rush to see a comment dunking on a guy you don't like, that you're actually getting on board with the guy who, as Richard says, wishes we literally kill ourselves because we have an opinion about Na'Vi. That's who you're riding with.
Yeah. Oh, it's mad. And look, let me explain why I'm saying all of this, right? Because, like, listen, yeah, I've struggled with mental health. I make no bones about it. Struggle with mental health, struggle with fucking substance issues and all sorts, mate. You know, my life's not been a happy fucking time, you know? But I take great pride in what I do, and I have carved out something for myself, and I'm immensely proud of it. And that's why, yeah, maybe I do get a bit precious, a bit defensive, whatever. It means a lot to me.
It must be the one thing they can't take from you, innit?
Yeah,
Like your actual
exactly.
accomplishments.
Yeah. So, you know, those are kind of important, yeah. But, you know, here's what I will say. Now, fortunately, me and Duncan, for whatever reason, we do seem to have, you know, which is why it's hilarious that you call us thin-skinned. I think we do have a much greater degree of mental fortitude than a lot of people in this business. But that's the key point, because you don't keep your pantheon of villains and bad guys consistent. It fluctuates. I've already talked about how your attitude has changed towards Sponge. Dust's in the chat, you know, good friend of mine. You know, think about all the madness he went through when fucking, you know, you've got the best player in the world calling him a fucking pig. You know, you all thought that was hilarious, right? I mean, yeah, we've joked about it. That's the best player in the world.
It was outrageous, though, I know.
An entire region, that was all they know about Dust, right? And what, for making a joke on a desk? People saying, "Don't hire him." You know, he's one of the most he's one of the most underrated members of the talent pool, and he works his fucking heart out. You all still hate him. You all still call him a cunt. You all still bully him. You know nothing about his personal life, what he's been through. You know nothing about him, and trust me, he's been through a lot as well. You know, and for him to get out of bed every day and come back for the beat.
Oh, another guy who loves Counterstrike. That's also the worst thing here, right? Is like, listen, I do love Counterstrike as a franchise. I've always said CSGO was never my game, but whatever. I still like it enough. It's got enough of the fundamentals. Yeah. But like, there's a world in which if it ever gets annoying, don't worry, I'll leave. I'll fucking go do something else. The second I don't care about this game, anyone who thinks I was here for the clicks, and you're just wrong. I can go probably make more elsewhere. I know you morons don't get that. I said this point actually recently in an interview that will come out, where I said the dickheads who think, by the way, maybe the SJW types, that they're going to ruin my career by like forcing me out of esports. You dumb motherfucker. You might make my life 10 times better. I'll probably be way more successful. If you actually hated me, you'd want me to just stay in this fucking rut where all I can do is be this character. That would actually be something of a punishment. Might even have a karmic component to it, you daft cunt. But you wouldn't understand that premise, would you? So, no, I totally agree. It's ridiculous.
So here's why I'm talking about all of this and why it's ridiculous within the context of community reaction. Because you do shift around, don't you? You don't keep your villains consistent. I mean, I'm not a consistent villain. Just December. Gone.
You broke a story next week that, like, you know, really did an important thing in CS. The same.
No, it's over now. No.
You think now it can never come back?
There's no coming back from where I'm at in terms of the lies now. I've seen this too many times. This is essentially I will always be the bad guy in the scene.
I do personally suspect that the Flashpoint thing is basically the line I can never come. That's the Rubicon I can't go back over now. Because of that, now forever, every single thing I say about the industry will just be somehow be to do with Flashpoint, won't it?
Yeah.
You know. So
well, you know, I did say as well, mate, when you went into it, I did tell you how it would go. But you know, we gotta make choices and take risks. But here's why it's important. Because me and Duncan are old dudes and we've been around the block and we've put up with everything. Me, I don't even really place a particularly high value on my own life. I don't really give a shit. Like I've been mired in reading like Thomas Metzinger and fucking, you know, all these books about how like human consciousness is a fucking mistake. I'm all right with non-existence. I'm okay with it now. I never thought I would be. I thought I had too much of an ego for it. No, the Buddhists were right. Ego's the problem. But anyway, there's other people that are going to come into this scene. There's people who are working in the scene right now. You're going to push someone over the edge, guys. I am telling you, especially right. Where's all this like kumbaya love bullshit? You know, we've just had a pandemic. People have lost jobs, lost livelihoods. I'm talking just esports specific, but outside of it as well. People have been cooped up indoors. And the one thing that we're all meant to have is like, well, we've got the internet. Thank God for the connectivity of it all. Thank God tournaments are still going on. Haha, like real sports wasn't as good as esports, was it? And because of that, because to like alleviate your boredom, you're just constantly fucking with people. Has a day gone by where someone in esports or streaming isn't the villain of the day? Has it ever happened? It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened in so long. I can't think. There is someone I am meant to hate today, And I am meant to not only hate them, I'm meant to tell them I hate them. I'm meant to do everything in my power to make sure they know that I hate them.
And also, by the way, it definitely is the psychological phenomenon of scapegoating. People need to look up what that is, how it actually played a literal psychic role in keeping communities in deserts together because you live in such shit conditions. What you are literally doing in this scenario, the other analogy is obviously like the fucking 3 minutes of hate or whatever, and it's like what the role of this is because everyone has a minimum minor new annoyances in their life. You just bundle all that psychic energy up and you just vent it onto the chosen person of the day, whether it has anything to do with you or not. That is really the phenomenon going on. It's why it's so dark. It reminds me of that fucking episode of South Park back in the day where it was like they had the Britney Spears character, and the idea was the reason they built them up to destroy them was that was like the equivalent of the old festival where you used to sacrifice the virgin for the crops or whatever the fuck. Like it was as though that's what they were doing with like pop musicians in this scenario. Like that is like sadly, it's playing a role in like how people are managing their own mental health, is to fucking just spew toxic shit onto other people on the internet.
Yep. And the irony is, of course, that's what they accuse us of doing by expressing like very milquetoast opinions. And listen, I probably have done it at some point, probably fucked up straight over the line. I try and own it eventually on a long enough time scale. But anyway, back to the point. Like I've seen the like people essentially crowdsource a suicide for their own entertainment. I watched it with Etika. That was, you brought him up. I didn't know the guy, never met him, never even did a show with him. Like, but I sort of was in that world and I was watching it happen. I was watching someone who was clearly having a mental health episode essentially be pushed and pulled around. Him talking about he talked about suicide on a number of times, and of course all the fucking armchair shrinks on fucking social media were going, well, you didn't do it the last time you said you need attention to all it. I mean, yeah, brilliant. I too recommend pushing people when they're at their absolute lowest. They're brilliant. You're the good guys in this one for calling out somebody, and just people putting him in. Here's a camera. Let's stick him on air. Let's do this. Yeah, but he's dead now. He's dead now. Right. So I hope you all got your fucking entertainment out of that. He's dead. He's never coming back. His family are grieving. It's a young man who's like could have gone on to achieve anything. Charismatic, funny guy, just wanted to entertain people. Who basically the internet broke him. He had mental health problems, and that wasn't enough for you. It wasn't enough to just revel in his health problem. You had to go the extra mile. And I'm telling you all, I know you want to go the extra mile in CS. Oh, we haven't had one, have we? We haven't had one. We haven't had that tragedy. That's what you're all pushing for. So think about that next time you press that little fucking orange arrow. Think about that next time you decide to go on Twitter. Because, listen, I'll take my licks. You're not getting me. I'm too fucking stubborn. It'll be someone else. And when it happens, I don't want people running the square. Richard was actually prescient about it. Just sort your shit out, please. And the mods, sort your subreddit out. It's a fucking embarrassment. I'll talk about when the Wreckful stuff happened. Livestream Fail kicked out all of their weird, fucked up moderators because they had some sicko cunts over there, by the way, Duncan. They had a mod. They had a mod who, was a moderator of eating disorder subreddits, but also ran a subreddit called Fat Girls Gone Wild, where overweight women were encouraged to share nudes. Think about how that connects. Insane. That sick cunt was a moderator on the Livestream Phil subreddit, and you wonder why it's fucking got mad, unhealthy fucking attitudes. Fortunately, they kicked that cunt out. Unfortunately, he just gets to slink away and probably come back on another alias. Right? But at least I will give credit to the moderators over there. They did all they could to basically stop that subreddit from pushing people as hard as it can to basically get the response. It's that standard slip a little bit. I'm friends with Casey, trying to think what's happening to her right now is an absolute outrage, and I am genuinely, concerned about some of the stuff I've seen, but in general it's better. CS now, the CSGO subreddit, it used to be one of the better esports subreddits. The standards completely slipped, and those threads, I'm not talking about valid criticism, I'm talking about the threads like, why is Pimp a cunt? Why is Semler shit? Here's a made-up story about a member of fucking talent.
Do you remember the one about Man where the title of the thread was, we need to talk about Thorin's Twitter? By the way, you are aware they'll even remove stuff that's tangential to CS from the subreddit because they'll say it's not relevant. The idea the subreddit just gets to go, we are a Counterstrike subreddit, but can we just all discuss how this person uses social media? Like, you're mentally ill. Like, if you're a mod and you allow that, as Richard says, half the problem is these fucking rats have infiltrated the mods. Some of them are the mods on this sub.
Yeah, it's true. And like I say, when I see see threads about me and there's abuse of me in there and people are defending it and going, no, that's not true. They delete the corrections but leave the abuse. So don't tell me the mods aren't complicit as well. You know, I've tried talking to them. They're not interested. You know, they're letting people basically iron out. It's degenerated to what every subreddit ends up to, where moderators just inject their personal stuff because there's no oversight at Reddit. So there you go. Something to think about. Let's just do one more back to bring it back. Let's just do one more esports thing, then we'll do patron questions, and then we'll peace out. So there was another aspect to the Flashpoint thing that maybe might make it even more of a debacle than it already is. And I don't know if you saw this. Now, I've not had time to get confirmation one way or the other if this is accurate. But another journalist, a guy that, you know, you'll probably know from dust2.us, Note or Naughty, I never ask him how to pronounce it. But he brought up the point on Twitter that the Flashpoint RMR isn't using the same rule set for overtimes that every other RMR event is used, and every RMR, you know, all the Valve events is used. And that is that in overtime, you have $10,000 starting money. I'm doing an RMR right now. That's what we're using in North America. Flashpoint are using the 16,000, you know, starting money for overtime. So I wanted to ask you about this. Like, is there a chance that this is a big deal? Do you think this violates competitive integrity? Do you think that Flashpoint, you know, having worked over there, do you think they should be using the same? Or do you think this is like a fucking storm in a teacup and just people trying to find more shit about Flashpoint, essentially?
I do think, look, put it this way, I'm of the same opinion you are, and I wish this was just standard practice, but sadly, I'm getting bored of just saying it a million times and no one ever doing it. This is why you don't need conferences about esports. The only people who go to conferences about esports are grifters trying to get more fake work. No one ever goes to actually solve problems. One of the things that tomorrow would make all of these tournaments 100 times better run would be if at the beginning of every tournament, you publicly release the rule book and then you stick to those fucking rules. If you do that, we can get rid of half these problems. Because the issue here is I don't know what the rule books for all these tournaments say. So if indeed we accept the hypothesis that apparently Valve RMRs are supposed to have a 10k overtime start money, not 16k, which is the max start money, then that seems wrong. Yeah, it sounds like Flashpoint is fucked up. They've maybe not looked into that detail, if that indeed is the case. And as a result, even though I would suggest, here's another rule thing that people never understand, you never change rules during the tournament. So whatever rule starts match one has to go to the last match of the tournament, and you can revise after the tournament. You can never change during the tournament, otherwise someone plays under different rules to someone else. So personally, I would suggest they should play all overtimes with 16k start money, assuming they haven't already fucked up and done 110k and 116, just to make it consistent. But I think after the fact, you should definitely look into whether it should have been 10k. If it was, I would suggest a public apology. I would take it on the chin and understand you fucked up. It's not the end of the world. You will play it all in the same scenario. Plus, nobody's noticed. But I agree, for the sake of the rules, like if that is what Valve in theory mandates, it should be that way.
Yeah, and listen, I'll add this. I mean, the problem you've got now is, and I'm not trying to meme here, this is a very serious thing. We're saying if the integrity of Flashpoint is compromised and you complain after the fact, you can now have a rematch.
Yeah, logically, there should at least be grounds for that.
There's a number of games.
Because in fact, I'll give you an example. Here's a very famous example. This happened in Counterstrike. When Fnatic played against NiP in the infamous elbow game when Moddy was still there, what happened was they played first and I think the story went, they played first and they won in overtime, but I think it was max rounds 5 instead of like 3 or whatever. And so then NiP was like, imagine that, NiP being the ones who lost and had to violate they were like, but the rules technically say it's a best of 3 or whatever. And then when they replayed it, I think in the replay that was when NiP then won, and then the elbow thing happened or whatever in that way around. So, or I might have got it the wrong way around, like we won the first one. But basically, this famous scenario happened in the past. So eventually, someone did do a restart of the overtime. So there wouldn't be no precedent for Anonymo claiming it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'll add. So the games that have had overtime, Astralis versus OG, G2 versus FaZe, and NiP versus Anonymo. The map that they won on Mirage that we've just replayed again. So does that void the fact that the wrong overtime rules were used? Do we need, So this is why you can't ever take that fucking, the genie's out the bottle now. People are always going to say, "Oh, should we have had a rematch? We didn't get a rematch." No, you've fucked up so bad. But for me, yeah, I would just say this. I remember there was a major qualifier, I think it was, or what, the first stage. Do you remember when they changed the bomb timer?
Yes.
And Splice. This is how Laser Lips fell out with me, right? So Splice played a game where they lost 16-14, and on the last round, essentially, they didn't have time to defuse.
Yes. And
that's how they lost. And Laser Lips went mental on Twitter going, well, we should replay the old game. But the point was, you played... How many... Look, we've lost the one round. And I went, yeah, but how many rounds did you win? Because the T's had to do more because they didn't have enough time to run around and get into better positions, and they had to take fights. You can't say that. The whole game was played in those conditions, and you've got to accept it because it went to completion. So you'll notice logical consistency, Duncan. Come on in. So yeah, but he was furious about it, and he blocked me on Twitter and hated me and said I was like, again, he's destroying esports. Like, fucking soy drinking cunt who's just turned up with VC money telling me once again about what I've done in the scene. A classic. But for me, I'll just say this. Since his rematches are the norm, if someone does come out and confirms that it is an official Valve rule set that needs to be observed, I think they need to go back and replay these games. I'll say it fucking flat out. And I think, unfortunately, yes, your idea is correct. But I also think you're going to have to change it immediately. It's only 3 maps, guys, so we'll just have to do it. But yeah, I mean, overall, how do you think Flashpoint have handled the RMR? Is it as bad as people think?
I mean, these rule fuck-ups are a problem. I will say, as I said before, if you actually knew the behind the scenes on day one of NiP's complete lack of evidence, mixed with doing really suspicious things like exaggerating and borderline lying, and constantly playing victim 24/7 while abusing the admins, yeah, that didn't give them a great look in terms of, like, if I was Flashpoint, I'd have red flags and alarms going all over the fucking place there. I'd even want to not work with you. I'd go, I'm going to find a way in the rules to fuck you if you're going to behave that way. Like, this is outrageous. So that setup did make me think, day one, it's almost inarguable Flashpoint was in a fucking tough situation. I'll also say this, right? I've got word that certain people who could, by the way, be massive voices of authority on exactly this topic were basically told, if they work, let's say, hypothetically with someone like ESL, were just told, yeah, you are not to address this publicly. Now, as a fan, you might not understand. That doesn't make sense. What would you have to do with ESL, though? Because here's one thing I found very conspicuous. The utter absence of people who worked for Blast and ESL commenting on this topic. You know what? When someone like Flashpoint fucks up, those guys love to come in. Fucking the flying DJ can't stay out of my replies trying to correct things I know more about than him about his own fucking company sometimes. These cunts can't help it. It's a reflex because they always think they're right. So one thing they love to do, right, is when they know the other guy fucked up, is point out how they wouldn't do that or they would do it differently. Now, no one said anything. And here's the reason I think why, Richard. Because I think some of those other TOs are going, Jesus fucking Christ, that could have been us. How would we have known about some fucking obscure security setting? Don't say anything in case it ever happens to us. And then secondly, definitely don't in any way take any of this heat off Flashpoint. The last thing I want any of you guys to do is make a measured remark that might make people think maybe the people at Flashpoint aren't utterly incompetent. Because, by the way, if you think that the Faceit admins are totally incompetent, you are a fucking moron. You know how many seasons of ECS qualifiers, they've run dream hacks, like these are, listen, they're not ESL and I wouldn't need to say Blast, I can't throw them in, they haven't been around long enough. They're not ESL have the best people in my opinion, by the way, sometimes because they just straight up headhunted people from PGL, etc. But just because ESL's the gold standard doesn't mean Flashpoint are a bunch of fucking morons. Like, Faceit have had a couple of bad ones, but even then I believe it gets exacerbated by the fact of teams aren't in Flashpoint, and also there's this dispute, and then we've said things about them. So, like, you can't ignore the ambience that comes with this criticism. So that's my biggest problem with it all, is, like, I personally do think there's an element where, like, a lot of other people, if you could like put a truth serum into some admins from ESL, etc., I think some of them would straight up tell you like some of this stuff could happen to anyone. And I think they would also admit, by the way, there is no way logistically you can offer everyone full rematches and you can have problems with the internet, just have going no issues, or the idea you can infinitely extend schedules. I think they would actually be very open to telling you this stuff. In fact, I'm going to try and make some content like this, but I'll have to make it more general, obviously not specifically about Flashpoint, because I feel like this is another area, just like economics, just like finances, just like fucking everything, the law, where we need the actual experts to give people some education. Because I find when I go into these areas, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, I myself go in knowing I have to sort of forget a lot of preconceptions I have and find out what is the standard here, what is the precedent, how do the rules work, what happens in X, Y, and Z scenario. Because everyone again's pretending. It's like politics. You all pretend like you understand all the nuances. None of us understand any of the fucking nuances, with the exception of if we actually put in the legwork to find out.
So, look, obviously we're going to do a sort of Flashpoint fuck-up special with Monty and another guest for the Four Horsemen. I think the summoning ritual will be occurring soon. So we won't belabor the point. We wanted to kind of cover everything broadly. That'll be more specific. So keep an eye out for that one. Now we will move into our patron questions. If you donate $50 or more, you get to ask a question about anything. And we will do our best to answer them. Watchdog asks, if Twitter accounts are journalism, what's the worst source in the UK? The Sun, the Daily Mail, or Piers Morgan's tweet? Well, I think they're all cunt. I'm pretty.
The Daily Mail. I don't get the premise initially of Twitter. Does he mean like their Twitter accounts are really bad, or does he just mean as a way of getting Piers Morgan in with those?
Yeah, it's so we can essentially, count Piers Morgan as a news source.
Here's the problem I've always had with those three sources: is I actually think only one of those sources is being overtly, intentionally disingenuous, and that is the Daily Mail. Like, I actually genuinely think the Sun have some of the shittest writers. They know that they have the lowest common denominator audience of all. They even know, by the way, they've got a very crass audience who just want the most tacky way of doing it. And I think they just deliver exactly what their audience wants. I think Piers Morgan genuinely believes all the things he's saying. Maybe he sexes up the way he phrases it, but I think they're all real things he thinks. I think he just is a bit of a cunt. But the other one, the Daily Mail, I genuinely believe they do craft like psyop level stories just to inflame and agitate people in quite fucking unethical manner, basically. And I would make a clear distinction there, you know.
It's very hard for me. I mean, personally, I would like them all prosecuted. You know, people are going to go, but aren't you about a free press? The one good thing we got in the UK that Americans don't fucking understand, and seeing cretins like Brian Stelter tweet about it's like soul destroying, is we actually hold our press to some sort of appreciable standards where there can be reprisals for not telling the truth.
Well, they've been sued by celebrities many times if people don't know, and those celebrities have won like $1 million cases like numerous times.
It's increasingly being eroded. But, you know, for me, the biggest problem we've got is that we've let the concept of a free press essentially supersede the concept of a responsible press. And this has led to,
It's the same as what's happening in the whole business world of like, but a private company can do anything. It's like, yeah, but that's within reason even then, isn't it? They can't literally do anything. So in the same sense, I agree. Like, yeah, the concept is you should be allowed to publish real opinions and facts. But like some of these people are like, essentially, if they know they're lying, on some level, that's a crime anyway. You've sort of defrauded people in some sense. Like that already is going close to the line.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, for the Sun, their reporting around the Hillsborough disaster was absolutely disgraceful and went so far as to essentially be covering up a criminal fucking conspiracy.
Yes, that's mad dodgy.
Yeah, so I mean, like, and I don't think the Sun has ever appropriately paid the price for that. News of the world, its history speaks for itself. I wrote an article at the time when
Piers Morgan himself was part of all that shit, wasn't it? All the hacking into the voicemail.
Exactly.
People don't know. One of the maddest stories ever, because again, you might just think naively, oh, it's just them getting information they shouldn't have. The reason why this is an infamous example people give is they essentially, allegedly, hacked into the voicemail of a missing woman who was presumed dead. And because there had been activity on the account, the police basically told the family she might be alive because she might have been trying to access the voicemail, and in doing so just extended their torment further for absolutely no good reason, just so some wanker could get the inside scoop on what she was talking about on a voicemail.
Yeah, not to mention, I mean, Piers Morgan had previous as well with what he did at the Mirror. Yeah, and people in
He
the
used
chat.
to openly brag about it. He used to, like, famously,
Yeah.
there was that episode of Have I Got News for You, where he just
where he
basically
said-
told like Ian Hussle, like, I'll have my people around your house tomorrow. And he wasn't joking, by the way. That wasn't
Nope.
banter. He was essentially using bully tactics to be like, look, you've dissed me, so I'll fucking have him wreck you.
Essentially, if anyone knows what Gawker did to people, the News of the World was operating like that, but it was a national newspaper, and Piers Morgan was very well connected with people of government. He's the youngest ever editor-in-chief of a major British paper, and I think he had that job at like 19, 20 years old. But anyway, he had he published a fake story about abuse when he was the editor of the Daily Mirror. He ran fake photographs of soldiers abusing Iraqis, which obviously was happening, by the way. I mean, we all know
just
about
didn't have the goods on it, I
Guantanamo
assume.
Bay. And he essentially lost his job over that. But yeah, if anyone, because I see people in the chat going, there's no way he did that. Go look up the Millie Dowling case. It's quite famous. He's a massive piece of shit, and he always will be. He can be right on occasion. Being a piece of shit doesn't exclude you from being correct. I don't think, we should hold that standard. And then obviously the Daily Mail, I mean, it's just a litany of, like you say, fucking, the Daily Mail has a very checkered history with a number of stories.
So they basically figured out outrage fucking journalism 20 years before Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But, they have lost a number of lawsuits themselves, published, again, appreciably fake stories. They're a shithouse rag, essentially. So that masquerades as being highbrow. I think they're all equally bad. I think we've got a real problem in journalism, and it's not just in the US. Although the US is the worst example I've seen in the Western world, but the UK is hardly covering itself in glory. Carv, we're almost halfway through the year, and two of my favourite quotes so far have been Thorin's "Who knew democracy dies in darkness" was actually a promise, and Richard's poignant reflection on American subculture with "Can we stop taking advice from a country whose citizens keep killing themselves during gender reveals?" Over all the years, is there a more memorable quote, rant, or monologue that sticks in your head that you associate with your co-host? I'd need time on this.
Yeah, the tough part of that is like this whole show, part of the like performance element is that we're just good at ranting, aren't we? So we do a lot of them. That's the problem. I'm trying to think, because the problem is, unfortunately, the most memorable one is actually probably the one you didn't do on this show. It's probably that one you did where, like, because we had to bump by the numbers by one day, you did that, like, what did they call it? The apocalypse stream or something, like 2-hour one. So that was probably the one that sticks in my mind. I would just say in general, because again, like I said, I think it's one of our strengths. I actually like it when, like, I'd see Richard's like solo videos. Like, I like the one he did about this NiP Anonymo one. I thought he had some very good angles on that, it's pretty well contained together. Had the right, basically, here's the other thing, and here's a little lesson for you idiots who are getting into esports journalism. It had the outrage in the right appropriate parts. It didn't just start at a 10 and address everyone and wreck everyone. Because another thing people do is they come in and they want to be a firebrand personality. It's like, guess what? You have to earn that spot. You have to earn it by basically very carefully initially moving out. Because otherwise, you're going to fuck
what
up.
You wish for.
If you fuck up 15 times and are just wrong, no one's going to give a fuck what you think at that point in time. You have to be on the money when you get mad at that stuff. So I think that's one that comes to mind recently.
Yeah. I mean, for you, I mean, shit, man, where do we even fucking begin? You crease me on most episodes. I'm gonna crowdsource this. I'll put a tweet out or something, basically asking for fans of the show to get the best Duncan rant, and then we'll show it. We'll show the findings next episode, I think. Appreciate the question, Carv. Zumba, if you could replace the villain in a movie with yourselves, who would you choose? I know this one straight off, mate.
Do yours then, go on.
Bane, 100%.
Just to do the voice?
No.
Just because how sick a character he was?
No, he's the good guy. I'm not even... I don't fuck...
You know the sad thing about that movie?
He needs to win.
We can do a little tangent here.
Yeah.
Like, spoiler, obviously, if you're so stupid, you're still listening after I said the word spoiler. I hope you actually get really offended when they find that. But I actually have always said this about that movie. Yeah. It has its problems anyway, but the way they crowbar the Talia character in at the expense of Bane rips the soul out of the whole movie. It
Ruins
even
it.
destroys Batman's storyline. It's actually one of the dumbest moves, considering I think Christopher Nolan's a brilliant movie maker otherwise. It's one of the dumbest moves I've ever seen, you know. Like, I agree with you, basically. I thought what they did with the Bane character there was, if his story, right up to the part you find that he didn't crawl out of that fucking hole, if that story had been legit, he, at a minimum, he's like an anti-hero sort of character. He's sort of like a twisted character that, you can understand how he get deformed, but you can get where he's coming from. Like, it's a mad, relatable character. I thought that was even, I remember thinking, like, why have you done that? You've just ruined this.
Yeah, that was completely ridiculous, and one of the worst sort of creative decisions I think I've ever seen in a mainstream blockbuster for sure. But yeah, the reason I think Bane is, like, you know, fucking so on point in what he's doing is, like, listen, you are essentially at some points in life, you are gonna have to say that, you know, if history teaches us anything, sometimes revolution isn't the worst thing in the world, is it? I mean, you know, you can go ask the French about that. And, you know, I wish we could work all our stuff out amicably as people. I'm not a fan of violence. I'm not a fan of, you know, having to, you know, I'm not a fan of conflict in the sense that I don't like wars. I wish people could get around the table, have a beer, chat things over. Doesn't always work like that in human history, does it? And let's be real. If anything, we've got to realize we're not a million miles away from just clubbing each other's fucking skulls with bones that we found on the ground. Like, let's stop pretending we've evolved into the next phase when realistically we are just the same old angry fucking primates we were. It's just now we have Starbucks reward cards. That's basically it. So yeah, look, I think for what Bane, like, the key line, the most fire line in all of that movie is when Bane goes to the fucking Wall Street equivalent in Gotham, the stock exchange, and the guy goes, listen, there's nothing here for you to steal. And he goes, well, why are you here then? And he
Pretty good.
and he nails it. He nails it. It taps into that idea that, there is this fucking 1%. It's not bullshit. You know, go look at what's happened during this fucking pandemic and go look at the people that have made money. Go look at how stories have... Right. I'll give you a classic example of why people should feel aggrieved and why me, as a lefty, not a righty, definitely feel aggrieved. There was, at the start of the pandemic in America, people were stockpiling hand sanitizer and masks and stuff like this. And then they were selling them at huge markups to essentially profiteer from a pandemic. And the government, the federal government, intervened, said they will not allow that. That's outrageous. So people were fucking fined. They had all of their stock took off them, stuff they'd legitimately bought with their own money, threatened with jail time. I think someone might even have gone to prison. Happened in a number of instances. Meanwhile, of course, there are a number of prominent companies that have certainly profited from the pandemic and certainly done cynical practices to profit. On top of that, what about the insider trading the politicians did when they knew about lockdown protocols and procedures and what businesses were going to affect it, and essentially sold stock so they didn't have to take the financial hit? Weird how that disappeared, isn't it? Weird how that disappeared from
it goes without saying, by the way, if me or Richard literally had done that as well, but we're nobody Lola, we would be in prison right now. For sure.
So listen, guys, I know, again, the prevailing sentiment that comes out of the global pandemic is, isn't it great that the world has pulled together and done this? Big Pharma, you know, they're like, well, we need that loan if we're going to rush this vaccine out. We're going to get that right. And then we're going to have exclusive distribution rights and all this. No one...
Dude, to me, it showed it was actually even worse than I thought. Literally, we are the most cynical possible race of people, except if the fucking, I don't know, whatever they were called out, Deep Space Nine with the massive ears.
The Cardassians.
Yeah, whatever those, no, was that what they call? I can't remember. The ones that were like just trading stuff 24/7.
Oh, the Ferengi.
Yeah, there we go, the Ferengi. Like, because basically, that's the thing. It's like, wait a minute. You all were still just only motivated by money at all times. Like, holy shit, give me a break.
Yeah.
I'll tell you mine though, right? Because the problem is, right, if I was going to be like Because that's what I thought you were doing with the Bane one. I thought the idea with the Bane one is you get to just like tear up the set, don't you? Because if I'm doing that, if I'm just doing it for the fun of being the character,
right.
The fun of being the character, obviously I'd just be like Edward Longshanks from Braveheart. Looked at he was having a fucking brilliant time most of that movie.
Oh, that actor,
he was a banger, mate. He was killing it.
Yeah.
But if I had to give a serious answer, I can actually do this very easily because I've often said my two favourite movies are The Prestige and Heat. I'll just take Neil McCauley, which is the Robert De Niro character in Heat. Because what I always loved about that character, it's why that movie's fucking insane. It's because all the characters...
Not even a villain, really.
No, but in theory, he's a bank robber.
He is. Yeah, but
he does kill people. Yeah, but that's why, again, he goes right up to the limit of like where it's like he can justify it, etc. And basically what I loved about that character was, it's who I wish I was in an idealized way until the end of the movie when it becomes who I am. This is the problem. I wish you'd think I don't know. I could just be like, here's something a lot of you don't know. If I'm ever at an event and I want to charm someone, I could fucking charm them like that. I'll have it's like, look at my interviews. I've meeting on the palm of my hand. They're loving it because I'm not blaming them. I'm not flaming them. I'm not bantering them. And oh my God, this is amazing. And we're getting a connection. I could do that all day long. The point is, sometimes I don't like to do that. So I know I could have an easier life, by the way. Yep. So what I loved about that character was he was perfect discipline, wasn't he? Remember his whole motto was, if the cops ever see you, 30 seconds, you're gone. They can never catch you. You have no connections. You can pick up and leave. I wish I could be that restrained. I wish I could tweet in exactly that way where I never say the wrong thing. It's perfectly calculated. But the problem is, the guy who at the end of the movie, who to the fans, he fucks it all up, that's who I can relate to, is the guy where it's like, you know what, I could get away with all this, but I've also got the address of this motherfucker. Yeah. And you know what? The more I think about that guy, I have to do this. So as I say, I always make time for Wayne Grow.
Yeah.
That is my fault, and it's also one of my strengths.
Wayne fucking Grow. But yeah, so I'm with you, mate. I actually would legitimately want to be Bane, perhaps a less brutal version of Bane. But, you know, just in general, in principles, like if Bane was running, if he hadn't took over the city and he was just running for office, he'd get my vote probably. Chingu, if you had to consume media from a certain decade, which decade would you choose? Very tough. I mean, shit, man. I guess we can keep this movies. I guess keeping movies and TV.
Oh yeah, good idea.
Yeah,
I think for movies it's easier because for me it's probably like 70s. I think 70s or 90s are the most banging movies.
It's hard, mate, because you got those Wicked Auto era where the director was essentially king.
That's
and all
the 70s, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, have you read Easy Riders, Raging Bulls?
No. Is it good?
Mate, that book's straight fucking fire. It's talking about all the auto directors and all, like all the cocaine, all the lunacy, but like, you know, doing high art.
The movies are unreal as a result. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's all about that era. You'll fucking love that book. It's straight fire. But yeah, for me, yeah, it's kind of out because I love all that. But then each era is so distinct in terms of what it throws up because it's like, you know, I've said this a lot. If you ever want to know where a society's at any given time, go pick 5 horror movies from like that decade, that country. And it just tells you, you know, like think about the 80s, right? Even a blockbuster movie like Fatal Attraction, like it's about AIDS, mate. It's about AIDS. It's AIDS. You know, think about the Cronenberg movies that came out with that time, the body horror. AIDS. Like, it was this new fucking disease. No one knew what the fuck was going on. Like, it was fucking blowing everyone's... It's AIDS. A one-night stand coming back to kill you, essentially. Yeah, AIDS. Of course it's AIDS. So it's like, it's super cool when you look at like movies. Like, you can sort of pick up on what the zeitgeist and the angst was. It's really hard, man.
Are you going 80s for yours then? Because that's like the horror... Isn't that like a classic era horror?
Yeah. It's hard, mate. Like, I watch a lot of fucking 50s low-key coming out of World War II. The stuff that got made around that time. Like, I mean, that's where you first start getting, like, in my opinion, true dark cinema and, you know, it's, like, really hard. But, yeah, I mean, like, the 80s, when I was younger, I hated all the 80s. I was like... Look at all the dumb action movies that come out in the 80s.
Mate, some of those have held up like a motherfucker.
Yeah, but it's also one of the most subversive, you know, kind of decades because essentially it's where the critique of American capitalism becomes like a mainstream trope.
Oh, it's in almost every movie if you think about it.
Yeah, exactly. Even the stuff that does, like Die Hard, for example, which I think is like 88. I think it was just pre-90s. That's like a super deep metatextual analysis of like fucking American society and kind of like consumer culture and America's place in a global landscape. with John McClane being the everyman American, So it's like, it's hard, mate. I'll just say 80s, fuck it, because you said 70s. I just think there's so much cool shit and undiscovered shit. And as you say, one of the golden eras of horror movies, which is always my jam. Fucking insane experimental horror, slasher era, extraordinaire, iconic villains. Like, imagine making a fucking movie like Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Imagine pitching that to a studio.
Yes.
What's the story? Right, there's this pedophile who worked as a janitor in a school, and he was touching the kids. So all the parents got together, burnt him alive in a furnace, and then never spoke about it again. But he's such an evil, malevolent force. He just comes into people's dreams to fuck with them. Not the people who killed him, their children. Like, what is that?
There'll never be expression on the level of what you could get away. I mean, the irony at the time is they used to bag on about censorship. Now it's just saying, don't watch it. They can still get the movie.
Yeah, it's like just it was the last. It was cocaine. It was high concept. It was a cavalcade of and it was the last truly free era. I think
before they got the genie back in the bottle, as it were.
Yeah. Dancer Master, why is it that the players still receive the prize money in tournaments? I can understand where it comes from, since there were no salaries in the beginning, and that was how they made money.
Yes.
But today the orgs pay an insane salary. So why is it still that players receive prize money and not just, for example, bonuses from that prize money?
I mean, it's certainly a very valid question. I can tell you that as someone who was unable to get teams to allow their players to play in tournaments where we were going to give $1 million away. Like, when I realized that, I thought the same thing. I thought, wait a minute, why is this happening? Like, as far as I can tell, this is the way it works in esports. The team org contracts the player, so however much salary he pays, that's it. And then the team org now cares about their appearance fee or their cut of the revenue of the TO. So at what point in time do we need prize money anymore? The only person I can tell that it's valuable for is if you have a tournament in which you have an open component and then some outside team could qualify. Like, obviously, if someone came second at the fucking Blast finals or whatever, and they'd come through that showdown, well, yeah, that guy might make fuck all salary. If he makes 2,000 salary and he can win 100,000, it is still life changing win. But that's sort of by the by in your example there. I guess he's talking more like, as we develop as a sport, won't it become like the NBA or something, right?
Yeah, and that's from Dance Master, by the way, in case I didn't say the name. Yeah, for me, I think you've got first of all, there's like some nuance to this. If the prize money didn't go to players, there'd be a lot of game developers that wouldn't put the prize money up at all. Like, Valve would definitely be one of them. If the idea was that all the prize money was somehow going explicitly to organizations to be divvied up how they want, Valve wouldn't put up any prize money. They absolutely adore the idea of players earning money through competition that they provide. They are less enamored with the idea of what organizations do in the ecosystem, which, again, I think is absurd, but that's where we're at. And so as a result, yeah, you would lose that. Also, on top of that, while it makes less, you can't have essentially a set of rules for the haves and the have-not. Because if I started an organization tomorrow and I wasn't a great powerful and I wasn't particularly well funded, didn't have sponsors, didn't have business, didn't have a slush fund, didn't have VC money, and then I was like, right, guys, I'm not paying you a salary, but we'll work out something with the prize money later, and I get the money, and then I just decide to peace out. I've just made a fucking fortune off the labor of the players, so you can't really justify that. But yeah, I agree. I think there was a trend, I want to say, a few years ago where the big orgs would negotiate contracts where they would take a percentage. And it would be 10%. And it was essentially designed just to cover the costs of sending the org.
Yes.
Players pushed back on that. And it was considered a bad thing if you didn't get 100% of the prize money. And the culture just shifted, because if you wanted to be competitive and have the best players signed for you, you couldn't take the money. So it was another area where players kind of got to have their cake and eat it if you were an elite level player.
Yes.
So it's very hard. I mean, I don't think there's any specific answer to that question. I think it's the convention. And, I'll just add as well, I've heard, for example, with TI teams, they negotiate a special contract if they qualify for the TI, where the org, gets a bigger cut, 50%, right, because it can be essentially a game changer. It can be the difference between an org living or dying if they get that money, if you win $1 million, say. So there you go. Right, Airhammer, which is more delusional, thinking Astralis will win the next major, thinking Tom Brady is the GOAT and not the most turbo-boosted player in the history of professional sports?
Like, Richard's not going to fuck with you on that one. You have to understand. That's a bit of a loaded question there, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Mate. Oh, Rogers is off, by the way.
No, he probably is. He probably
he's
is.
bailing. Mate.
I hope he does, mate. You have to understand. It's like I've always said. I hate.
He should go to New England.
Yeah, By the way, it would be the obvious team to go to as well, wouldn't it? Like, it's best storyline. But no, I hate it when I have a player I like and I don't think the team does everything for him. It's one of the reasons why I'll always criticise Na'Vi. Because your motherfuckers are the main people shutting Simple down. It's not anyone else, is it?
But that's the thing. The Na'Vi fans think I hate Na'Vi.
I know.
They think I hate Simple. I didn't even respond to that thing with Simple. I was just, I didn't get involved in that drama. Whatever. But yeah, I mean, listen, the idea, anyone who tries to argue that Tom Brady's not the GOAT is just a fool, I think, personally, but, whatever. So I think it's more delusional to say Australia will win the next major. And I do fucking love when when he loses again. I love watching Rogers fans, all the gymnastics they do. It's everyone else's fault.
There's the other thing that people don't understand, because probably the worst gaslighting of my entire career is when people tell me that I literally hate the human being Reckless, whatever his name is, Martin something.
Yeah, I know.
Right? It's not that these mentally ill fans, the exact ones doing it right now, have hounded me for a fucking decade about my opinions about said player, almost a decade, to the extent that I will actually go out of my way to say things that are almost at the line of being over the line, but not over the line, to outrage exactly them as the most minor form of a battle of attrition, a non-stop gaslighting onslaught. It was never about the player, by the way.
Yeah,
sometimes it becomes that because then the player has an issue with you and then you find out more about sometimes it can develop like that. It's always those fans, though. It's always the shit-stirring kid in the middle going, he said, this is what did you say about him? Are you going to fight him then? Oh, he thinks he's going to fight you, like that. That's you. So it was never about that. But that's the worst gaslight, is when they try to claim that they were it was just between you and that guy and they were never involved. It's like, no, as you're saying there, for example, I think Tom Brady's a fucking brilliant player. I just don't like when his fans make loads of excuses I don't think are legit. So yeah, same thing. Obviously, if I was a fan of fucking the other way around, I would just think, well, it's fucking annoying how nothing's ever his fault. It's not one or the other, is it? It's not everything's all your credit or all's on your blame. That will never make any sense. That just shows you're an ultra.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, I don't think Australia have any chance of winning the next major either, so that has to be the answer. Reykjavik asks, would the legendary British food chain Greggs work in America, or are they too good for some bloody sausage rolls? I'll tell you this, Americans have an attitude where they just assume British food is shit. And, don't get me wrong, America food is straight fire. I haven't had a good Chinese since I got back to the UK. I'm fully jonesing for getting a real Chinese takeaway. But I don't think Greggs would work. They would consider it stodge, and because it doesn't seem to have a regionality to it or something you can attach. It's not very. It is bland by comparison to the average American food as well. So no, I just don't think it would. I think they would find, they consider it. It's you've seen that famous YouTube video, I'm sure we're dunking to that guy who goes, trying baked beans on toast. As if it's some sort of fucking outrageous concept, right?
It's basically some DDK level cunt just out in the world, just doing what he's doing. And I will now be trying this McVitie's biscuit.
Yeah. And it's
for my taste.
He sets it up like he's about to eat a dog turd, Divine from fucking, And instead he's like, oh, this is really nice. Yeah, of course it's beans and it's bread, you mad cunt. What you expecting? But there's also another meme I see all the time where it's someone walking down a road and it's American tourist visiting England, and then there's a guy around the corner with a fucking bat about to hit them, and it says under there, beans for fucking breakfast. They just, for some reason, they just don't. They can't get on board with the concept of a good baked bean, so I don't really think they're going to enjoy British food in general. So yeah, Greggs absolutely wouldn't work. I'm pretty sure whatever evil fucking corporation that owns Greggs, owns something in America called something different that serves completely.
I think they would have tried it basically if it would have worked.
If it would have worked,
exactly. Wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Orky, following up the Seinfeld discussion last week, have you guys ever tried Curb Your Enthusiasm? You don't know what you're about to unleash. I see it as a slightly more ridiculous R-rated version, which follows Larry David, executive producer with Jerry on the original. Are you fans of the show? Mate, I fucking love Curb Your Enthusiasm. Not so much the last couple of seasons. I think.
Well, as soon as they started taking breaks, it went off the boil, didn't it?
Well, it's because now they really lean into the character element of it, and it's here's a Richard Lewis episode, and here's it. It's at its best when it is just Larry David just drifting through life and everything. It's
supposed to be some light-hearted, awkward shit in it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. One of the funniest episodes of TV is Beloved Cunt. It is one of the funniest episodes of any comedy ever committed to television. It is absolutely brilliant and super clever. Even crazy things. The one where he gets a fucking pube stuck in his throat. Like, mate, I fucking love Kirby Enthusiasm, and I love the
that one where him and his fucking agent are reading that book where it's like all freaks or people with cancer or something. You remember that one where they're just laughing
mate,
like, because obviously everyone's looking over at the supply.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Why is he doing that?
I know.
Exactly. No, but like it's so mental, mate. Because like the reason that it resonates with people, it's because like on the surface, Larry David is a character you can't get inside his head. He's a fucking writer of like not just one of the most successful financially comedy shows of all time, one of the most revolutionary comedy shows of all time, a literal premise that most networks would reject, the idea that it's just a slice of life about people you don't know, and it's literally all about the interplay and just like the banality of existence being filled with it. You know, he fucking like he's a multi-millionaire, high-level executive. I shouldn't be able to relate to that guy, but where its genius is in, we can all relate to the idea that due to a fucked up convergence of circumstance, terrible things happen to you. You know, I look at Larry David and the stuff that happens to him in an episode of Kirby Enthusiasm, and then I think about the Babam incident, that Take TV thing, where it's like, Babam has to not cast, Babam has to dislike me, Babam has to have a tantrum. I think I'm not doing anything wrong. Henry then goes and tweets, "This is my idea of hell." People go, "Oh, Henry's Richard Lewis. He says he's in hell if he's around Richard Lewis." And then just this mad, like, you know, brouhaha that comes out the back. That's like Kirby Enthusiasm episode. So yeah, it's incredible, mate. It's like it's ultimate. The first 5-6 seasons of that are fucking straight fire. Like, so yeah, love it. Benakagi, I'll be running a tournament later this year. As a first-time TO, what's one piece of advice you would give to ensure it's the best event? Well, there you go. I think we've already touched upon this with the Flashpoint thing. Make sure you absolutely preserve the integrity of the tournament above all things. It doesn't matter if it's a broadcast that's going to be late. Doesn't matter if you're going to have to fill and all the morons are going to be in Twitch chat going, "Start game, boring casters, start game, start game." They don't realize we're talking, so you're not just staring at a blank screen, which apparently would be more fucking preferable to these cretins. But yeah, that would be it. Like, no matter what happens, make sure everything is there in place, as good as it's got to go. Make sure the results matter. There's no shenanigans, and and build up the significance of that throughout the tournament.
Agreed.
Yep. And then the last question, Bacon. I miss show matches and fun at events. Blast have some segments between games, but other than that, I don't see any pure fun, entertaining aspects during events. How would you solve this today? I think the problem you've got is there are two types of fan in esports, and there's one that understands it's an entertainment product and can engage with the entertainment on that basis. Me and Duncan, our philosophies has always been entertainment first, right? Like, you know, have some fun, have some banter. It's fucking esports. It's meant to, don't take yourself too seriously. Here's a baguette, smash it, you know, like here's a fucking here's Henry under a desk wearing a ginger beard, you know. It's meant to make you laugh. It's meant to be enjoyable. And people who like that and understand what we're trying to do, they engage with it. You have another bunch of people who go, "That's cringe, bro, start game," and all they want to see is the game. And I wish actually that, like, you know, I wish there was a way those people could just fuck off and just like watch the game alone in a room, which is clearly what they prefer anyway, instead of having to sort of interface with a broadcast to get the game, because anything that isn't the game pisses them off. So when you do try and have fun, you know, say it's a scrawny bit doing a quiz about what skin do you prefer, he gets hate for that. You know, people go and abuse Scrawny for doing that. It's, you know, it's a sponsor activation. There is no tournament without that. So, yeah, I think you have to be super careful, because people only like the fun, frivolous bits if it involves players. Generally, if it's you on the broadcast, I'd say it's like a 60-40 split that they hate it, because our audience is immature. Anything
Basically, the problem I've always thought with those show matches is very simple, is that most of the people who arrange them are still on some very low narcissistic level, living out their vicarious dreams of when they used to be a pro player. And so they actually take the match seriously, play the match seriously, the ultimate cardinal sin, by the way, and then actually really care about who wins the game or not. If it's a show match, It's in the fucking name, daft cunt. It's a show
Sure.
match. Make it like ridiculous WWE. Have stupid things happen. Play it up. Talk mad shit. Have the mics be open between every round before the fucking round starts after freeze time, so you can banter each other. Like, make outrageous bets, but then live up to them. Play so that you go for every no scope and every knife, and you try every silly flank you can do. Just make it entertaining. Like I say, I think some of those guys, they just get caught in between the middle. They go between it being entertainment and between it being a real match. And in doing so, to me, that's what always makes a lot of those games not very good. Because especially the pros, like, if I have a pro on my team, I want to encourage him to have some fun. I don't want it to be like Kenny S is actually watching the corner while I peek it. Like, that's fucking garbage, guys. That's not fun at that point, is it?
Yeah, they've never got. I don't think we've ever had a truly like great show match. Really. Like, yeah, people don't lean into it. Like, you have to beg the players to play. I mean, that's the mad part, right, man? You should want to be there. Like, it's an extra game. It's fun. It's your brand. Your fans. Nah, they don't want to do it. You have to twist around. Anyway, it's been a long show. We'll wrap it up there. I know there's some more questions that will carry over. It should be a shorter episode, less drama, hopefully. So all that remains to do is basically thank the sponsors one more time. Shout out to .com/RLS. Check them out. Content on there. Go check out that giveaway I've just retweeted. I'll do a native tweet or whatever the buzzword for it is tomorrow, but check it out. And obviously, of course, NordVPN. Get yourself a VPN, 70% off. Go to nordvpn.com/RLS. And obviously the patrons that brought the show back from the dead. $100 patrons: Jerky's Minion, Will the Weed Wrangler, Benedict, Zarathenia, Cathal, Flacksmith, J-Dubs, Hannah Maru Alice, Tobias Bernasconi, Carve, and Marcus Kjumpa. And our $50 patrons: Zumba, Petty Grievances, Tim Frost, Bukowski, Dancer Master, Adam Ox, Nolan, Judas, Can of Pasito, Airhammer, Norwegian Clameye, Bacon, Goody Woody, Lonnie, Fursock, Echo, Rez Chi, Miss Alcoholic, BP420, Watch Doge, Reykjavik on Steam, Carter, CMAC 1991, Benakagi, Alex C, and Sard Sawar. Thanks for your continued support. You take care of yourselves. We'll see you on the next episode of By the Numbers.